mountain range, a man with blonde hair and deep scarlet eyes traveled with his son, Rong Nianbing. The man's name was Rong Tian. He asked whether the boy was tired. Nianbing denied it and asked whether they would see his mother soon. He had blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes. His breathing was heavy and labored because of the exhaustion he had denied having a moment ago. When Nianbing said he missed his mother, Rong Tian reassured him that they would see her again. It had been 10 years since they parted ways, and there was no place for them to live in peace in the whole world. Rong Tian expressed his unwavering determination to see his wife, even if it cost him his life. Nianbing asked why some people would not let him see his mother. In response, his father scowled before explaining that there were matters that the boy would not understand until he grew. Rong Tian urged his son to stay behind in the village and await his return. However, the boy insisted on tagging along. Nianbing refused to be left behind by both of his parents. His father reminded him about the magic scroll, which he had taught the boy how to use while taking it out of his cloak and handing it to Nianbing. Rong Tian said it was all right for his son to travel alongside him because he had the means to ensure his son's safety. If something went wrong, Nianbing would activate the magic scroll, and it would teleport him to a safe location. Nianbing expressed his determination, while his father wished there had been enough time for him to train the boy. If Rong Tian had the chance, he would teach his son to become the most elite fire mage in the entire world. Unfortunately, time was not on their side. If Rong Tian did not reach the Ice God Pagoda by the following day, he would never see his wife again. As the father-son duo proceeded through the forest, Nianbing swore in his heart that he would become an unrivaled fire mage as strong as his father. His mother's name was Bing Ling, and she was an ice mage. His father, Rong Tian, was a fire mage. Ice and fire were conflicting elements, so when Rong Tian and Bing Ling married, they decided their children would only choose one of the elements. Nianbing's mother once suggested that the boy would learn fire magic from his father if they had a son. If they had a daughter instead, the little girl would study ice magic from her mother. Nianbing's father had a distant look in his eyes and a dull expression as he drowned in the nostalgia brought by his wife's absence. He then swore that as a fire element mage, he would stop the ice snow goddess's sacrifice inheritance and get his wife back. 3 days later, a bright orange flame flickered in the middle of a small clearing in the vast forest. It rapidly spread the orange flare along the ground and drew a brilliant array of complex symbols. A ripple in space appeared, and Nianbing flew out of it. He crashed to the ground and struggled to catch his breath as he screamed at the top of his lungs, calling for his parents. He had used the emergency teleportation scroll to escape a precarious situation that separated him from his father. Nianbing quietly traveled through the forest, and his shoulders sagged in defeat when he heard a disturbance behind him. The noise announced the arrival of 3 men, cloaked in blue robes. The 3 men were Nianbing's pursuers. One of them said that the fire element teleportation scroll had been activated. However, it was fortunate for them that its user was only a child. Otherwise, they could not quickly follow the trail of magical energy. Nianbing looked at the familiar faces of his assailants and gritted his teeth with anger. He charged at them and demanded that they return his parents. In response, one of the robed figures shot an elemental water blast at Nianbing. The attack hit the boy squarely on his chest and sent him flying dozens of meters back. The man in the glasses stopped his colleague from attacking the child in case the boy got seriously injured. The bespectacled man, who had the title of Frost Priest, addressed Nianbing and said he had no intention of harming him. However, the boy was the child of an ice and a fire mage who had been captured. Therefore, for the Ice God Pagoda's honor, Nianbing could no longer exist in the world. The Frost Priest demanded that the boy hand over the Ice Snow Goddess gem in exchange for a painless death. Nianbing frowned deeply and scoffed at the mention of the Ice God Pagoda's honor. He had been back to the edge of a cliff while mentioning what his father spoke about the true nature of the Ice God Pagoda. It looked pretty from the outside, but was rotten inside. Nianbing yelled at his assailants, saying they should keep dreaming if they wanted the Ice Snow Goddess gem, and he would not give it to them even if he died. The gem was precious to him because his mother left it to him. As he spoke, a bright fiery aura gathered in one palm, while an icy blue aura gathered in his other palm. He yelled at his opponents to go to hell as he valiantly charged at them. The bespectacled Frost Priest was surprised by the unexpected attack and prepared his elemental spell as Nianbing's fiery palm flew toward him. The Frost Priest countered the incoming attack and sent Nianbing flying over the cliff's edge and into the river flowing at the bottom of the ravine. The boy sunk like a stone beneath the surface. The frost priest squinted and wondered why the boy could not even be persuaded by death. He called Nian Bing a stubborn child, while his colleague asked how the boy could activate 2 types of elemental magic. He lamented, saying it was a waste because they did not have enough power to freeze the entire river. Otherwise, they would have already possessed the 2 elemental gems. The frost priest decided that they should abort the mission because it was a failure. He said he would take the blame when they returned, and the boy's fate was up to the heavens. On a distant riverbank in Peach Blossom Forest, a fisherman cast his net into the azure river while humming a melodious tune. He dragged his net across the water and seemed to have caught something. The net strained in his hand as he hauled in his catch. The weight made the man wonder whether the river had such large fish. He was excited that he would not need to worry about food for the next week. However, what he saw next was baffling. Entangled in his net was the frame of a little boy. Later, at a wooden cabin in the forest, Nian Bing slowly opened his eyes and sat up when he saw a faint silhouette. Although disoriented, his first instinct was to check for the 2 elemental gems in his care. He was relieved when he felt their presence. Afterward, Nian Bing inquired about the identity of the stranger before him. The stranger casually crossed his legs and said he had saved Nian Bing's life, and that the boy was lucky not to have drowned. He then brought over a bowl of soup while narrating the challenges of bringing the boy back to the cabin from the river. The bowl contained steaming hot veggie rice soup. When the fragrant aroma hit Nian Bing's nose, he salivated and his stomach rumbled. He then used the spoon to take a sip before his eyes widened in shock. The soup was so delicious that he devoured it ravenously and without reservation. The reaction caused the older man to watch him with keen interest. Nian Bing had no idea about what had just happened to him. He could not understand why he felt as though he had been starving. The boy concluded that the soup was unusual when he noticed how thoroughly he had cleaned the bowl. Nian Bing returned the bowl while still stunned by how delicious the simple soup was. The older man chuckled and said the bowl was cleaner than it would have been if it had been washed. Nian Bing's blank expression made the older man laugh heartily before asking whether something was wrong. He said it was normal for a child to gulp down the food. Then, Nian Bing looked at the man's scarred wrists and wondered about his identity. Later that evening, Nian Bing exited the log cabin and looked toward the rundown shed nearby. He went into the shed and found the older man sitting alone. The man explained that he was the only one living in the house and was glad he was no longer lonely. He showed Nian Bing the food he had prepared, although it had grown slightly cold. He offered to heat the food for a little while, warning it wouldn't taste the same. The man attempted to start a fire using sparks from 2 small stones, but the rocks slipped from his unsteady hands. When Nian Bing offered to help, the grandpa apologized for his age and said he should have used the lantern. At that moment, Nian Bing's expression focused while he chanted a spell to activate his fire magic. Great flames burst forth and ignited the firewood, causing the older man to exclaim in shock. Nian Bing had not noticed the reaction and turned back, saying that the flame was ready. He was stunned because the older man rushed to his side, beaming excitedly, and said he had finally found what he had been looking for. Nian Bing was surprised and asked whether the older man was all right. In response, the grandpa asked whether the boy was a fire mage. Nian Bing instinctively denied it. However, the older man persisted and explained that he did not intend to harm the boy. Rather, he had only gotten a bit too excited. The man admired Nian Bing because the boy was already a mage at his tender age. A moment later, he showed his hands to Nian Bing and asked whether the boy had noticed the scars on his wrists. He said he was an older man with 2 half-broken hands and could not harm Nian Bing. The boy was curious and asked what had happened to the older man's hands. The grandpa offered to tell him a story about something that had happened to him when he was younger. He promised that the boy would understand his excitement when he saw Nian Bing's fire magic when he was through with it. The continent of Rangoon had taken 300 years to establish 5 empires, and it had been 70 years since then. Within the past decades, there have been some skirmishes between the empires. However, the situation was generally peaceful. The older man explained that he was born in the Ruchi Empire in the southeast of the continent and came from a low-income family. His biggest wish was to make delicious food for his parents. However, when he was 13, his parents contracted an incurable disease and passed away. Afterward, he was sent to a restaurant to learn how to cook. It was where he met his teacher. His teacher said more than effort alone would be needed if he wanted to be successful. Therefore, he also required comprehension. The teacher said, 10 years of practice, 10 years of understanding, a quote the older man always remembered to the present day. When he was 23 years old, he had mastered cooking skills and lost his teacher. The teacher's words remained imprinted in his student's mind as the latter took his cooking knife and went on an adventure. He traveled to every corner of the Rangoon Empire, learning every type of cuisine from every corner of the land. After 10 years, he had comprehended the true essence of cooking, competed with other chefs, and developed his unique cooking techniques. Afterward, his skill had become so formidable that everyone called him the Demon Chef. His skill enabled him to win 5 championships at the continent's Grand Master Chef competition. Moreover, at that time, the imperial palaces from all 5 empires wanted him as their master chef. Nian Bing stood with his mouth wide open in disbelief. The older man continued, explaining that he refused the offers because he was only interested in improving his cooking skills, to which he ultimately dedicated his entire life until he was 47 years old and had yet to marry. At that point, the older man paused. Nian Bing was surprised by the older man's intriguing past and eagerly asked what happened afterward. The older man continued narrating. A while later, something changed his life forever. That year, he fell in love with a beautiful and lively woman. Her every move and her every smile caused his heart to quiver. At the time, the woman was only 24 years old. Although he was twice her age, he still fell for her. She was also a chef, but a pastry chef. After long consideration, he decided to confess his feelings to her, even though he did not expect her to accept him. However, the woman's response to his proposal was neutral, and she proposed a challenge. She wanted to compete with him in cooking, and if he won, she would marry him. If he lost, she would take all of his titles, and he would leave the world of cooking behind. 18 of the most well-respected chefs in the continent were invited to judge the contest. The older man was confident back then and used all his abilities to make 6 well-known and complicated dishes. Surprisingly, the woman said she would only make 1 dish, and that alone would be enough. What followed was a spectacular display of refined cooking skills combined with the woman's fire magic, and she handled her cooking knife with deadly precision. It turned out that the woman was a mage, and a very powerful fire mage. Although the man was confident with his 5 dishes having almost reached perfection, the woman had only made 1 dish. Something special filled his inside when he ate the golden meat strips she had prepared. Although his dishes were excellent, he needed more creativity. Nian Bing interrupted, saying that the lady had won by luck, and explained that when a person could control the fire element to its peak, there would be different levels of heat that normal ovens could not achieve. He explained that the older man would have been better if he knew magic. The older man frowned sadly, recalling how people told him the same thing back then. However, he was a man and had admitted defeat. At that time, he slit his wrists as a sign that he would no longer remain in the cooking world. Nian Bing eagerly asked the man whether he regretted his choice. However, the older man said he did not. Although he had lost everything, he had found a new way of cooking, magic combined with cuisine. He also knew only a handful of people were willing to try the method, among the noble mages who would lower themselves to become a chef. At that moment, Nian Bing was hit with a sudden realization and asked whether the older man wanted him to study cuisine with the combination of magic to become a magic chef. The older man did not hesitate and asked whether the boy was willing to do it. However, Nian Bing apologized and said he could not. In response, the older man sighed and said he understood. He then asked Nian Bing to share some of his own stories, such as where the boy came from and how he ended up in the Azure River. Nian Bing honestly admitted that he had no intention of lying to the man who had saved his life earlier. He explained that his parents were mages and that he had a happy family life. However, his parents had recently been taken from him in a conflict. Although they had killed a few of their enemies, they were ultimately defeated and captured. Nian Bing completed the short tale with a gloomy expression. He swore to take revenge on the ice god Pagoda one day. The older man could sense a dark shadow over the boy's heart. He turned away with a bowl in his hand and asked Nian Bing not to be downcast about the matter. He said that regardless of whether the boy was willing to study under him, his home would always be open to Nian Bing. He spiked the water bowl with an unknown substance as he spoke before offering it to the boy. Nian Bing received the bowl and drank from it while the older man watched intently. While Nian Bing drank from the bowl, he asked why the older man had yet to heat the food. It was then that his vision suddenly became hazy. He could only see the silhouette of the older man who apologized to him and said he had no other choice because the boy was his final hope. Nian Bing's eyes glazed over and he dropped the bowl, and his hands hung limply. The older man used a powerful hypnosis technique while the boy was dazed. He bit his finger and flicked his hand, sending large drops of blood toward the boy as a colorful aura surrounded Nian Bing's body. The older man sealed the boy's memory before introducing himself. His name was Jia Ji. While hypnotizing the boy, he suggested he was the boy's teacher. He programmed Nian Bing to forget everything except for his knowledge, and in his heart, nothing would be left but the persistence of mastering the skills of cuisine and magic. He wanted this to be the boy's greatest ambition in life. Nian Bing responded in a daze and said that from that day onward, he would forget everything except his knowledge. Jia Ji touched Nian Bing's head and continued the hypnosis. He set a seal on the boy's memories. They would remain sealed until Nian Bing was strong enough to destroy his enemies. Otherwise, the memories would forever be sealed. At that moment, Nian Bing slumped into Master Jia Ji's hands. The retired demon chef wished him a good nap while Nian Bing was in his arms. He expressed his surprise about having to use hypnotism against a child. Jia Ji apologized to the boy and said there was no choice. If Nian Bing did not acquire Master Jia Ji's cooking skills, all of the man's knowledge would have been forgotten. With a dull expression, Jia Ji said that maybe when the boy's memory awakened, he would resent him. But that would be all right. Jia Ji was certain that when the boy developed, he would not be a mere demon chef like him. However, he would become a mage chef who knew the spells of magic. Nian Bing would succeed in many more ways than Master Jia Ji, and would do what ordinary chefs could never do. Maybe Jia Ji was selfish, but the boy's parents were still alive, and he was certain they would not blame him for his actions. While he shut the door, he said that chasing the true meaning of cuisine was better than living in the shadow of vengeance. Nian Bing's room was soon dead silent. A moment later, his eyes flew open and he sat up. He held the ice snow goddess gem in his left hand and thanked his mother for giving it to him. Otherwise, he would have lost all his memories, and his soul would not have been protected. Nian Bing took a moment to ponder and wondered if the older man's words were true. After a while, he realized that what the grandpa said was true. All of Nian Bing's enemies were powerful mages. They were so powerful that even his father could not resist them. If Nian Bing were not powerful enough to defeat them, his vengeance would have no meaning. He realized that all he could do at that time was set aside his pain and focus on becoming a more powerful mage. His parents had left him the Fire Lords and the Ice Snow Goddess gems. Both gems were the keys to his power. He remembered his father's explanation that fire element magic suited him best, and opposing elemental magic could not be practiced simultaneously. However, Nian Bing realized that if he chose fire elemental magic alone, the Ice Snow Goddess gem would be useless to him. Nian Bing had sat in the lotus position, channeled the auras from both gems into his body, and they naturally balanced out. When he left his room the next morning, he cheerfully greeted Jia Ji and addressed him as Master for the first time. The latter had been preparing breakfast when he heard the boy's voice. He was momentarily surprised by the title, but quickly regained his composure. Nian Bing's eyes were wide with curiosity as he asked his master about how he would begin his studies. Jia Ji pondered momentarily and said the boy would begin training by tasting every dish he would prepare. Nian Bing wondered if the man meant his training would progress by eating all day. Jia Ji explained that cooking and eating were both arts. He asked the boy to find ways of eating that would enable him to identify the dish's ingredients and report the same. Nian Bing assumed the task was simple when the food was set before him. He quickly ate, and afterward Master Jia Ji asked how he felt about it and to describe what he had eaten. The boy said it was delicious. That was all he could tell. Nian Bing only gave his master a blank stare, making the older man throw a tantrum and ask if the boy had anything else to say other than the food's taste. Nian Bing nervously answered that he had rice soup with some plants. Master Jia Ji was exasperated and tossed the table with his student on top of it. He could not believe the boy did not even know what he had eaten. Nian Bing then tried flattery on his master, but the attempt backfired. Jia Ji then cleared his throat and explained that the boy needed to identify good food and what made food taste good. When eating the meals his master prepared, he would need to go through 2 stages, and only afterward would he truly begin learning the art of cooking. When Nian Bing inquired about the 2 stages, his master gave him a peculiar look that made the boy shiver. Master Jia Ji explained that the 2 stages were simple: lean to fat, then fat to lean. Nian Bing wondered why the stages were as such. His master chuckled and said the boy would understand later. He said that if the boy was full, he should chop some wood. Nian Bing eagerly complied with the request and said he had wanted to use an axe since he was young, but his mother would never allow him to try. Before him was an enormous axe embedded in a tree stump. Its sheer size made the boy cry foul, asking his master if he was kidding. Nian Bing asked if the axe before him was for chopping wood or magic beasts. Master Jiaji laughed before explaining that he wanted the boy to chop up wood, and the thinner the planks were, the better. He also explained that as a chef, the boy needed to have a strong body, and at the same time, his knife skills also needed to be trained from scratch. He then tossed a tiny vial to Nian Bing and asked him to consume its contents before he began working. The boy emptied the vial into his mouth before reacting with disgust. His master explained that the blossom in the forest was toxic, and the vial's contents could prevent the boy from getting poisoned. After 3 months, the boy would naturally develop antibodies against toxins, and only then would he be safe. Nian Bing sighed reluctantly at the thought that he would have to chop wood for 3 months. He strained to lift the towering axe, but when he finally swung it over his head, he collapsed under its weight. He lay on the ground, grumbling that the axe was impossible to lift. He then wondered whether he should use magic instead. He realized he could burn down the forest if he used fire magic. At that moment, he had a strange idea. He had learned the second-tier fire spell, the Fire Blade. However, he thought he could modify the spell by substituting fire with the ice element. Maybe then he could form a sharp blade to chop wood. Nian Bing then chanted a modified spell, and in the next moment, he wielded a sharp ice blade in his hand, which he threw at a nearby branch. The ice blade sliced cleanly through the tree branch. Later that day, the boy returned with the haul of firewood, which surprised his master. Master Jiaji asked whether the boy could use the enormous axe. Nian Bing apologized and admitted that he had used magic. He had used 7 ice blades to complete the job. The number was his current limit. Master Jiaji shouted at his disciple, asking if he was crazy because fire magic would burn the entire forest down. Nian Bing awkwardly replied that he used ice magic, which stunned the master. Considering the boy's age, old Jiaji thought it was impossible. He wondered how his student could wield 2 types of elemental magic because both elements contradicted and opposed each other. At that moment, his heart was filled with bewilderment. After a short pause, he laughed heartily and said ice magic was good for cooking. He also expressed how jealous he was of the boy. Amid his laughter, he emphasized that from that moment onward, it was important that the boy only use the magic in cooking and not for anything else. Otherwise, Nian Bing would not improve his skill. Master Jiaji then admitted that he had only been messing around when he asked the boy to use the enormous axe. Nian Bing sighed at the thought that his master only cared about cooking. During the evening meal, Master Jiaji asked Nian Bing to analyze the food. He threatened to beat the boy up if he used the word delicious to describe the food again. Nian Bing said he needed clarification about what was in the food. However, the dish had a fresh, salty taste and a fragrant aftertaste. Master Jiaji stared at him with a frown, while Nian Bing said that the food was also crunchy and felt nice and warm in his stomach. The master asked whether that was all the boy could figure out before commenting that there had at least been some improvement in Nian Bing's deduction. Jiaji proceeded to explain what was special about that evening's dish. In the days that followed, the master and student did everything together. Master Jiaji taught Nian Bing how to fish in the river and supervised his wood chopping. He also taught Nian Bing how to hunt in the forest. All the while, the seasons changed, and soon a year had passed by. Nian Bing asked whether he still had to chop wood every day. He had reached the point where he could chop the wood as thin as chopsticks. His master, Jiaji, said it was still too early for the boy to graduate from wood chopping. He insisted that the wood was still not thin enough, smiling awkwardly as he looked at the chubby boy beside him. He also commented about how much weight Nian Bing had gained. The boy recalled that fat was not the only thing that had grown during the past year. The ice and fire elements within his body had also developed well. It had taken him months, but Nian Bing had finally figured out what was wrong with his power. Recently, there had been a great imbalance between the 2 incompatible elements within his body. The domination of either element over the other would likely put his body at risk, and the only way he could temporarily resolve the problem was to chop wood daily. He learned how to control his breath and improve the accuracy and force of his swings. That way, his body could perfectly replicate the movements and enable him to cut the wood uniformly. After repeating the process thousands of times, his body and spirit had reached a certain level of stability and control. The magic power in his body had grown stronger than before. Therefore, the daily exercise temporarily allowed him to suppress the contradiction between ice and fire in his body. During that day's wood chopping, Nian Bing held the large knife and asked his master if the wood was thin enough. Master Jiaji inspected the wood, which was as light as a pencil, and said the boy still had a long way to go. He explained that a standard piece of firewood must attain a uniform shape of a silk thread, and then commented that the latest piece in his hand was still too thick. However, he was only bluffing, because he inwardly recalled that it had taken him 3 years to reach the boy's current level. He secretly appreciated the effort that his student had put into the work. Master Jia instructed Nian Bing to put the firewood in the cart so that they could leave. The boy asked where they would go and beamed joyfully because he could finally go out. Master Jia explained that they would go to town for shopping. On the way there, Nian Bing complained of hunger and asked when they would arrive at their destination, the Ice Snow City and the capital of the empire. The city was a few miles away from their home. In the blazing heat, Nian Bing asked whether he could use an ice spell to cool them down. Master Jia immediately shot down the suggestion. He reminded the boy how he had accidentally frozen him instead of the fish they had caught. After a while, they rested at the base of a large tree. A galloping sound was suddenly heard, and several knights appeared on white horses. They were escorting a carriage. Master Jia immediately recognized them as the Silver Feather Knights. This guild of knights was famous all over the continent for being one of the aces of the Ice Moon Empire. There was a saying in the continent, the appearance of men in silver armor with colorful feathers could shake the world. The feathers on their helmets had different colors according to their ranks. Master Jia explained that the hierarchy of fighters was similar to the current rankings of mages. Nian Bing asked about the man leading the squad who had a white feather on his armor. The knight had a stern look with purple hair and rode valiantly. While referring to the warrior rankings his master had mentioned, Nian Bing asked if the white-feathered knight had the rank of a grand swordsman. At that moment, they noticed that the knights were approaching them. When the white-feathered knight arrived next to them, he flung 3 silver coins at them and ordered them to leave because his mistress wanted to rest there. Master Jia made a sarcastic remark about the knight's generosity. However, he said they were not beggars. That place was a public area, not the knight's home. Nian Bing yelled at the knight in support of his master, saying that the knight was no one to boss them around. In response, the knight pulled the hilt of his sword from its scabbard and repeated the stern order for them to leave. At that moment, a woman stepped out from the carriage. Alongside her stood a little girl who was her daughter. The woman had dark green hair, blue eyes, and a light blue silk dress. She had a noble appearance when she ordered the knight to give up on the spot and said they had no claim to that place. Therefore, there was no need for them to intimidate the older man and the boy. When Nian Bing gazed at the woman's face, his eyes widened in shock, and he called the woman mother. The woman was stunned and asked whether there was something on her face. At that moment, a tiny figure appeared behind the woman, surprising Nian Bing. She had a small umbrella and short bob-cut hair, and called Nian Bing a pervert for staring at her mother. Nian Bing could not restrain his emotions and dashed toward the woman. A knight rushed forward to intercept him, wielding a sword and ready to cut him down. Nian Bing responded quickly, shot 2 ice shards, and disarmed his assailant. He promptly dashed past another knight, who found it impossible to stop him. What surprised them more was that Nian Bing could use magic. Another knight gritted his teeth with rage before flanking the boy while charging a condensed ball of magical energy in his palm. He intended to attack Nian Bing's blind spot. Master Jia shouted out of concern as the knight leaped into the air while shouting for Nian Bing to go to hell. At that moment, a thin hand extended past Nian Bing's side and countered the knight's attack, blasting him away. The hand belonged to the beautiful woman Nian Bing thought was his mother. The latter was shocked that the woman had saved his life. On the ground a few meters away, the knight was speechless at his mistress's actions. Meanwhile, Nian Bing gazed at the woman before him with eager eyes. The elegant mistress reprimanded her knight and said Nian Bing was only a child and the knight had used excessive force. When she finished speaking, Nian Bing lunged forward, hugged her waist, and wailed while calling her mother. In response, the woman comforted him and asked what was going on. Nian Bing tearfully requested her not to leave him again. The little girl appeared behind Nian Bing, pulled him by the corners of his mouth, called him a pervert, and ordered him to get his hands off her mother. Nian Bing was unwilling to let go, and while struggling to maintain his grip, the woman's dress was ripped. Her pearl-like skin and long legs were immediately exposed. The woman was immediately flustered and attempted to cover up, while the men around her, including Master Jia, were pleasantly surprised by the view. The serious-looking leader of the knights called his mistress with concern, while the others turned away and covered their eyes and nosebleeds. They were concerned that if the woman's husband, the Marquis, found out about the incident, he would gouge out their eyes. Master Jiaji had a goofy expression with sparkling eyes and a bleeding nose. He gave Nian Bing a thumbs up for a job well done. The head knight was still blushing and held his blade against the older man's throat, ordering him to turn around. Otherwise, he would have his eyes ripped out at once. What happened next surprised Master Jiaji. The woman condensed magical energy and restored her dress with ease. Meanwhile, on the ground, the little girl was pummeling Nian Bing and calling him an idiot for daring to embarrass her mother. The woman called a little girl Chen Chen and asked what she was doing. In response, the little girl looked up at her mother and asked why Nian Bing had called her his mother. Master Jiaji approached the scene with concern, asking what had happened to his student. Nian Bing looked miserable and had already received a black eye. His tone was downcast when he said the woman before him was not his mother because his mother had blue hair. The beautiful woman crouched, looked into Nian Bing's eyes, and asked whether she genuinely resembled the boy's mother. Nian Bing replied affirmatively. Master Jiaji sighed and explained that the boy's parents had departed from the world, and Nian Bing's reaction to her was likely because he missed them a lot. Master Jiaji quickly apologized to the woman. However, the woman said it was all right because she found Nian Bing adorable. Her daughter held Nian Bing's face against hers and said she was cuter. She considered Nian Bing just like a big ball and said fat boys were fun to play with. The girl's mother chided her for acting naughty, while Nian Bing lowered his head and apologized for offending the lady. The woman's response was gracious. She explained that if she resembled the boy's mother, perhaps their encounter that day was not by chance. Her hand extended to him, containing a jade token with her name. She explained that if the boy ran into unexpected trouble in the future while in the Ice Moon Empire, the token would greatly help him. Her daughter complained because she had repeatedly asked for the token yet was always turned down. Nian Bing was reluctant to receive the token. However, Master Jiaji urged him to do so and to appreciate the woman's kindness. Shortly afterward, the master and student duo departed from that place after expressing their gratitude. The head knight asked his mistress whether giving the prosperous sky token to commoners was all right. He was concerned about the Marquis's reaction to the matter. In response, the woman smiled and asked whether the knight had seen a 10-year-old boy who could instantly cast basic magic spells. She had a hunch that in the future, that child would become famous on the continent. She addressed the knight as Captain Feng and suggested he care for his men. In response, Captain Feng reprimanded his subordinates for failing to protect their mistress and getting disarmed by a child. He ordered the knight in question to hand over the red feather on his armor and dismissed him from the ranks of the Feather Knights Guild. As they traveled toward their destination, Master Jiaji glanced at the jade token in his hand. The name on it read Yu Ruyan, the noble woman's name. He was surprised by her generosity and wondered about her real identity. Nian Bing overheard him and asked whether the jade token was expensive. Master Jiaji explained that the jade cost a fortune and was the best on the continent. He explained that wearing the jade token would help the boy nourish his temperament, ward off evil, and protect him from any plague. Most importantly for Nian Bing, it could bring peace and calm to his mind. Nian Bing wondered whether peace and calm would help him balance his magical power. He then said that the woman was very nice and promised to make her some delicious dishes to repay the favor as soon as he mastered cooking. Master Jiaji laughed and said it was too early for the boy to say anything, considering his present skills. After a while, he announced their arrival at Ice Snow City. Nian Bing had never been to such a lively city. He was surprised by the population and the activity around him. He had never seen so many shops and wondered whether his master was rich. Jiaji bragged and said he was once known as the Great Demon Chef. He said that he wouldn't be able to spend all of his savings even if he had several lifetimes, and he lived in the forest only because he enjoyed the peace. Master Jiaji reminded Nian Bing that the essential part of their shopping was to find the boy a new knife. Nian Bing was excited because he would finally stop using the axe and hoped to get a good knife. Later, when they passed outside a restaurant, Nian Bing said he was starving and asked whether they could eat something first. The waiter served them a plain-looking meal, which made Nian Bing express his disappointment. He wondered why they had to eat such food when his master was rich. Master Jiaji retorted and said the boy would not starve if he ate the food, considering the fat on his body. He also reminded the boy that he had been eating the master's cooking and asked if he could easily eat outside food. At that moment, he signaled to the waiter and asked for 2 servings of green vegetables. The waiter thought the older man's attitude was strange, considering he looked poor. A moment later, Nian Bing began eating. He habitually dissected the food composition as he stuffed his mouth. However, he only expressed disappointment as he described the dish. The food had been cooked with unheated oil, and the fire control had been terrible. The fragrance of the ingredients had not been brought out at all. Instead, the chef had added too much salt and artificial flavoring. Master Jiaji complimented him for finding the shortcomings of the dish and promised to demonstrate his skills as a reward. He then stood up and called the waiter. The waiter's expression was displeased when he asked what the man wanted. In response, Master Jiaji tossed him a gold coin, greatly surprising the waiter. Master Jiaji walked through the restaurant after he asked the waiter to lead him to the kitchen. He intended to use the kitchen's ingredients to prepare a meal for himself and Nian Bing. The waiter graciously complied with the request, and shortly, Nian Bing shut the doors to the kitchen while the chef complained about the customer's poor attitude. He was proud and said he married his wife because of his cooking skills. The waiter encouraged the chef to calm down because they would return to the kitchen later to look around once the older man had left. Master Jiaji asked the boy how long he could hold his fire spell. Nian Bing said he had no problem doing it for an hour. That was enough time for the demon chef, who instructed him to chop all the vegetables except the tomatoes into strips. Nian Bing skillfully did so with the prowess of a seasoned chef. As he prepared the vegetables, he remembered his master's lesson about the most important component: seasoning. The other requirements of their dish were relatively easy. Nian Bing chopped the tomatoes and prepared the prawns and oysters as a separate paste. He placed every other ingredient into a mixing bowl afterward. 1/3 of the seasoning sauce was placed at the bottom of the bowl, followed by all of the chopped ingredients. And finally, they brushed the remaining sauce onto the ingredients and heated the pan with fire magic. Nian Bing chanted a basic fire spell and lit a fire beneath the cooking pot. He then asked his master whether they should clean the kitchen. He was concerned that the restaurant's chef could steal their recipe. Master Jiaji dismissed the concern and said that the chef could not understand the recipe even if he taught it to the man. An hour later, the meal was ready. Outside the kitchen, the exiled chef and the waiter got a whiff of the fragrant aroma. The chef said the fragrance was delectable, while the waiter said he had never smelled anything like it. They quickly opened the door and asked to taste some of the food. Nian Bing greedily denied the request and said they did not deserve to taste his master's cooking. Master Jiaji chopped Nian Bing on the head and asked where the boy had learned to be so mean. He then gave them each a serving of food. The men stared at their bowls and salivated. A while later, the master-student duo walked out of the restaurant while Nian Bing said the food had been too delicious, and he could not imagine what would happen to him if he left his master's side. Back in the kitchen, the waiter eagerly ate his portion. At that moment, the chef suddenly realized he was average compared to the mysterious older man and other competent chefs. He then raced out of the kitchen and caught up with Master Jiaji. He said he had finally understood the true meaning of cuisine. He admitted that with his intelligence, he did not qualify to learn from someone like the older man. However, he requested to know the older man's name. The chef justified his curiosity by stating that the skills that Master Jiaji had demonstrated could not belong to a random person on the street. Master Jiaji smiled contentedly and complimented the chef for his insight. However, he said he was just a poor little old idiot. The chef regretted it because he realized the older man had overheard his earlier insult. The master and disciple journeyed through Ice Snow City to buy Nian Bing's new knife. When they passed an exotic-looking weapons shop, the boy assumed it was their destination because the blades inside seemed high quality. Nian Bing had naturally changed direction to face the exotic weapons shop. However, his master said it was not their destination and asked the boy to continue following him. Later that evening, they arrived outside the dilapidated entrance to an unknown courtyard. The place seemed abandoned and quiet. However, it was a weapon shop. Master Jiaji led the boy through the entrance and called out to the owner of the place in a familiar way, making Nian Bing wonder if his master knew the proprietor. Master Jiaji said that he did, and the proprietor was the best swordsmith on the continent. While Nian Bing expressed shock, the door to the old weapon shop creaked open, and the hunched-over figure of an older man stepped through it. The elderly man said he had been wondering who was bold enough to be so disrespectful to him, only to find that it had been the demon chef he knew from the past. He gazed at the chubby boy beside Jiaji and asked whether the man had finally accepted a student. At the same time, Nian Bing wondered if the older man was the continent's top divine blacksmith. Master Jiaji chuckled proudly and said it would also be good if the old blacksmith found an heir to his legacy. Otherwise, all his knowledge and experience would be buried with him. The old blacksmith frowned at him and retorted, saying it was no simple matter to get himself a disciple because it was a matter of fate. As they walked deeper into the blacksmith's shop, The two old men roasted each other as though they were back in their younger days. The old blacksmith asked what Jiaji had to exchange for a blade other than money. Jiaji replied that Nian Bing would cook for him once the boy mastered his cooking skills. The old blacksmith said he would probably not live long enough to see that day. Living 10 more years would be a blessing, considering his many questionable deeds. After a bout of bickering, the blacksmith explained that he could not simply craft a blade for the boy, because he forged blades based on their user's size. However, Nian Bing still needed to be fully grown. Therefore, the blacksmith could not craft a blade for the boy. Master Jiaji awkwardly retreated from the argument and proposed that he should look at the blacksmith's arsenal of ready-made weapons instead. The old blacksmith agreed and asked the master and student to follow him. He opened the arsenal a while later, and a dazzling light shone. The blacksmith proudly displayed his selection of ready-made weapons, while Jiaji was stunned by the murderous intent coming from the weapon shelf. He was genuinely impressed and said it was expected of the continent's top blacksmith to create such weapons. On the other hand, Nian Bing realized that one of the weapons resonated with the ice goddess gem in his possession. He was concerned because the gem had been stimulated, so his internal magic power balance was broken. He turned his attention back to the weapon shelf and thought that even normal people could tell that the 7 blades before him were unique and perfect. However, only one of the weapons resonated with his ice magic. It was a dark and plain-looking blade at the end of the shelf. When Nian Bing moved closer, his master tried to stop him. However, the blacksmith said it was the boy's decision, and he alone could choose his weapon. Nian Bing stretched out his hand and retrieved the blade. He skillfully swung it with a confident smile and announced to his master that he had made his choice. The boy realized that wielding the weapon amplified the power of the ice goddess gem. At that moment, the divine blacksmith was shocked by the fluctuation of magical energy released when Nian Bing held the weapon. His reaction made Master Jiaji laugh and compliment his student for choosing a good weapon. In response, the blacksmith snatched the blade from Nian Bing's hand, causing Master Jiaji to complain. The blacksmith explained that he did not expect the chubby boy to choose that specific blade because he considered it the worst of the 7 on display. Master Jiaji argued that the blade released a light when the boy held it, and wondered how the blade could be bad. He challenged the blacksmith to admit that he did not intend to sell the blade. The blacksmith dismissed the argument and said that he, the divine blacksmith Hua Tian, always kept his word, and that if the boy chose the blade, he would sell it to the boy. He explained that the light appeared because Nian Bing must have practiced ice magic. He then congratulated the old demon chef for getting a mage disciple. Afterward, Hua Tian explained that the blade was the worst because it was the only item he had yet to craft personally. Instead, he bought it for cheap from someone, and if the blade was stimulated with ice magic or cold duqi, it emitted the light. The exact reason he considered it the worst was because the blade had no soul. His last statement puzzled the master and student duo. Hua Tian then asked how old Nian Bing thought he looked. The boy said the old blacksmith appeared slightly older than his master. In response, Hua Tian explained that he appeared to be a little more than 10 years older than Jiaji, when he was 3 years younger than the old demon chef. This phenomenon occurred because he used his blood essence to refine weapons and forge their souls. Because this method went against heaven's will, it damaged his soul and led to his present appearance. Hua Tian explained that because the ice blade had no soul, it could never reach the highest realm, no matter how good its material was. Moreover, the blade was made using a strange material he could not refine. The blacksmith explained to Nian Bing that the only way to give the blade an actual soul was to carve a gem into it. The divine blacksmith considered gems as souls, a better alternative to blood essence. He then paused before saying that only the gem that was of the highest quality could be used. Otherwise, using a lesser gem would only make the blade worse. He sighed with disappointment when he noticed a bright glow from Nian Bing. The boy drew his attention, eagerly displayed the ice snow goddess's gem, and asked whether it would suit. The divine blacksmith Hua Tian held the ice gem between his fingers and was momentarily speechless. Master Jiaji, on the side, was pleasantly surprised that his disciple had such a rare item. Nian Bing explained that he could practice magic much faster when he used the gem. He then asked the divine blacksmith whether the gem could give the blade a soul. In response, Hua Tian's expression brightened as he said it could be done. He did not care where the boy got the gem. However, with such a high-quality gem, he was excited that he could finally refine a blade that would stand against the heavens. Finally, Hua Tian asked the master and student to help set up the furnace. Afterward, he asked Nian Bing to help him pull the bellows before explaining that his 9 infernos Dao Qi could not melt the ice blade. However, it could still soften the blade, which would be the perfect time to carve the gem onto it. The moment he activated his Du Qi, the boy did as he was told, and there was soon a raging blue fire within the furnace. Master Jiaji wondered what material the blade was made of because it did not melt under the incredibly high temperature. The divine blacksmith made a hand sign and spat his blood essence onto the blade. The flame turned orange and congealed at the hilt of the blade. It was then that the blacksmith embedded the gem to the hilt. As the final step, he asked for the boy's hand, sliced it, and splashed Nian Bing's blood onto the gem, causing it to emit a dazzling bright blue light that shot into the sky and formed a pillar of light. A long-haired man watched the phenomenon in the night sky on a distant rooftop. He called it the legendary descent and thought the world would collapse again. Elsewhere, a fair-skinned and elegantly dressed woman leaned into her seat. She had felt the magical power fluctuation in the distance and recognized that it had come from a powerful artifact. According to the reports from her subordinates, the gem was lost in a river. She used a glowing crystal ball to activate a locating spell to trace the origin of the power. Unexpectedly, the crystal ball shattered. This convinced her that the power came from the ice snow goddess's gem. She then summoned her subordinates, informed them that she had detected the presence of the ice gem in Ice Snow City, and ordered them to retrieve it. At the divine blacksmith's workshop, Hua Tian panted heavily, causing Nian Bing to be concerned. He then grinned proudly before brandishing the blade and announcing it was complete. Hua Tian said that he had underestimated the power of the gem. However, he had successfully crafted a divine blade. He explained that Nian Bing was connected to the blade by blood. Therefore, only he could activate and use the full potential of the blade. Hua Tian expressed his reluctance to hand over the weapon and said that it was a shame that it would be used as a mere kitchen knife. After the two old men bickered briefly, Nian Bing asked the divine blacksmith to name the blade. Hua Tian settled for the name Morning Dew after some pondering. Later, the master and student returned to their residence. In the middle of the night, when Master Jiaji was asleep, Nian Bing stood silently in the nearby courtyard and held the hilt of his new knife. He wondered whether his mother would be angry at him for carving the gem into the blade. When he recalled his mother's unwilling sigh as she left, he felt it only fitting to name the blade the Sigh of the Ice Snow Goddess. When Master Ji's snoring finally drove him crazy, he left and found a secluded place to cultivate. Nian Bing stood silently and circulated dual elemental magical energy in his body before he realized that something was wrong. His body hunched over in discomfort when he discovered that the two elements in his body were in a frenzy. Both gems filled his body with magical power. Each tried to suppress the other as fiery red and cold blue auras surged violently. The rampaging energies engulfed his body, making Nian Bing wail in agony. He felt his body brimming with power to the point where it could explode. The jade pendant around his neck shone brightly, engulfing the area in white brilliance. At that moment, Nian Bing had a flashback to when his father, Rong Tian, explained that ice could extinguish the fire element. However, the fire element could also melt ice when it gained a certain level. Therefore, both elements were mutually restrictive. Rong Tian explained that only ice and fire had a close relationship out of the 4 conventional magical elements. He narrated how a certain senior explained that when ice and fire reached a subtle level, they could be transformed into each other. At that time, Nian Bing was surprised by the strange concept, while his father said that the idea was controversial and had created many conflicts in the world of magic. A few thought the idea was possible, while most denied it. Rong Tian belonged to the latter group. However, when he met Nian Bing's mother, he realized that the idea was possible, and the phenomenon was what he named the same source of ice and fire. In the present, Nian Bing lay sprawled on the ground and noticed that the two elemental energies within his body were not simply balanced, but seemed to be blending. Early the next morning, Master Jiaji called his student to wake up. When there was no response, he threatened to fetch the boy himself. A familiar voice came from behind the door. However, what Master Jiaji saw next greatly surprised him. Nian Bing walked through the door, seemingly oblivious to his master's reaction. He apologized for practicing late into the night. The old demon chef could no longer contain himself, wondered whether he had seen things, and asked Nian Bing why he had suddenly become thinner and taller within a night. In response, the boy gave a mischievous smile and said that his master could be imagining things. In reality, Nian Bing was not sure what had happened. He speculated that the previous night, the intertwining of ice and fire elements forced out all the impurities from his body, causing it to undergo major changes. He was still determining the specifics. However, he knew that the prosperous sky token had saved his life. When Nian Bing regained his composure the previous night, he noticed that the ice and fire elements had harmonized. His body had released a thick cloud of steam and rapidly shrunk. He could no longer tell whether the combination of the elements formed pure ice or fire energy. However, it did not matter. Most importantly, he had finally achieved something he had been attempting. He could simultaneously wield both elements, and he had reached the realm that his father had mentioned. Nian Bing traveled the town with his master as several hooded figures rode swiftly through the street. When he spotted the ice symbols on their cloaks, he angrily gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. The hooded figures were from the ice god Pagoda, his old enemies. However, he forcefully restrained his anger and calmed his heart because the day for revenge had yet to arrive. Nian Bing inwardly swore that one day he would go after the ice god Pagoda. A month later, Master Jiaji announced that his student could finally begin cooking because Nian Bing had mastered wood-chopping skills. He reminded the boy not to be too excited because, from that day onward, Nian Bing would be preparing his meals, and the master would only give guidance and comment on the results. The first meal that Nian Bing had to make was pak choi. He had already learned the ingredients and method of preparation from his master. Nian Bing finished preparing his first dish and was proud of his accomplishment. When he tasted the food, he spat it back out almost immediately and wondered why it was completely inedible. He was certain that he had followed his master's guidelines. Afterward, the old demon chef tasted the food. A moment later, his boot was seen through the door, kicking his student out for making such a crappy meal. As he lay on the ground, Nian Bing wondered why he couldn't swallow his food, considering he wasn't a picky eater. He was in a strange predicament because his master could not cook for him anymore. That was when the boy realized why Master Jiaji had been so nice and always cooked for him. Nian Bing had been served delicacies prepared by the old demon chef over the past year and had become fat. Now that his training had begun, he had to rely on himself for cooked meals. Yet his stomach could not adapt to the changes. Images of his master's mocking laughter filled his mind when he realized what the man meant when he said the boy would become fat and thin again. Nian Bing got up and roared with determination, saying his master's plan would not work against him. He would master the culinary arts as soon as possible. In the meantime, Nian Bing would finish whatever dish he prepared. He got up for another bite, but all was in vain, and he gave up soon afterward. Nian Bing despaired and asked the demon chef for help because he had not eaten for 2 days. However, Master Jiaji only scoffed and kicked him out of the cabin for daring to prepare rubbish for human consumption. He said if the boy wanted to eat, he should rely on himself. The seasons changed, and Nian Bing was kicked out repeatedly. However, each time he improved his skills. Eventually, Master Jiaji got bored of kicking him around. 8 years went by in a flash, and the familiar figure of a young man with blonde hair flew through the doorway of a wooden cabin, an event he had unfortunately grown accustomed to. His golden hair covered his eyes as he asked why he had been kicked out again that day. Naturally, the young man was Nian Bing, who was already 18. He looked confident when he said he could not claim to have surpassed his master. However, he had made significant progress, considering that he could eat every meal he prepared thrice daily and cooked for his master. The old demon chef stood in the doorway and admitted that he had grown accustomed to kicking the boy out after all these years. Nian Bing smiled in response because he understood the older man. He fetched a wooden chair as his master had requested. Master Jiaji slumped on the chair, making Nian Bing look at him with concern. At that moment, Master Jiaji looked at his student with a weak expression and said it was time for the boy to leave. Nian Bing was shocked and asked whether the man was joking. He argued that he had yet to learn all his master's techniques. The old demon chef coughed and admitted that after 8 years, the boy's skills had surpassed his own, and all along, the demon chef had been lying to Nian Bing. He admitted there were things that the boy could do better than him, and there were others that Nian Bing could do that his master could not. He urged Nian Bing to leave because there was nothing more to teach the boy. Nian Bing tried to protest. However, the old demon chef said he could care for himself, and Nian Bing should not worry about it. He said that the boy's skills had stagnated much like his own. Nian Bing would no longer improve if he stayed with the older man. Master Jiaji explained that he had only been selfish and only wanted to pass on his skills when he began teaching Nian Bing. However, the boy did not blame him and put his heart into studying cuisine for all those years. Nian Bing was shocked because Master Jia Ji knew his secret. In response, the old demon chef referred to the time he saw Nian Bing reveal the ice goddess gem. Jia Ji saw the hatred in Nian Bing's eyes when the boy saw the members of the ice god pagoda. It was then that he knew that the hypnosis never worked. Jia Ji expressed his belief that the boy was a good person and had hidden the story about his parents for a reason. Nian Bing expressed his willingness to share his past. However, Master Jia Ji said the boy should keep it in his heart. He did not wish to know about Nian Bing's business with the ice god pagoda. However, he asked the boy to promise to hide until he wielded enough power to avenge his parents. Nian Bing had a bitter expression when he agreed to the promise. Master Jia Ji then reached into his cloak and pulled out an object wrapped in cloth. He held it to Nian Bing and said the object was his old partner. From then on, it would belong to the boy. Nian Bing was startled. However, his teacher asked whether he remembered the old divine blacksmith, because the object was the blacksmith's best work besides the morning dew blade in Nian Bing's possession. The boy unwrapped the blade while his master explained that it had been carved from a fire dragon's horn. The blade released a dense fiery aura when freed from its fabric restraints. It was named the Scorch Blade. Nian Bing examined the blade and asked whether dragons existed. In response, the old demon chef admitted that he had never seen one, but had only heard legends. He explained that because the blade had been carved, it looked plain. However, it contained the ancient power of the fire dragon. The old man admitted that he had been too confident when he competed against the young woman who was now the current demon chef. If he had used the Scorch Blade, Jia Ji could have won regardless of his opponent's status as a mage. Jia Ji then cautioned Nian Bing against underestimating the current demon chef. When he coughed, Nian Bing tried to discourage him from moving too much. Master Jia Ji dismissed the gesture and announced that his student had graduated. Finally, he had passed on his skills, and they would not rot with him in the tomb. With labored breath, Jia Ji asked what his student would do after he left. Nian Bing admitted that he had never thought about it. In response, his master suggested he go to Ice Snow City to pass his regards if he found Hua Tian. Nian Bing earnestly expressed his unwillingness to leave. Jia Ji denied the plea and said Nian Bing could not remain under his wings forever. He also mentioned 2 top-tier restaurants in the Ice Moon Empire, which were located in Ice Snow City. They were the Grand Pavilion and the Pure Wind House. Master Jia Ji advised his student to consider the 2 places as his first stations. Once Nian Bing arrived, he was meant to study their cooking techniques. Jia Ji reminded him to leave any place where he showed his real cooking skills. This was because his skills would draw the attention of government officials, and many problems would follow. Nian Bing tearfully agreed to follow his master's instructions. He promised to walk his master's path, to reach every corner of the world and learn every type of cuisine. Master Jia Ji chided him for crying and directed Nian Bing to take some gold from his savings before leaving. Jia Ji's expression was dull as he leaned back in his chair and expressed his desire to have fish for dinner. Nian Bing eagerly promised to prepare the best sauced fish as he left and promised to return soon. At the same time, Master Jia Ji gazed reluctantly at the fading silhouette of his student. Later that evening, rain fell over the peach blossom forest, and Nian Bing rushed back with the freshly caught fish. He was met with an unexpected scene when he arrived at the cabin. Despite the rain, Master Jia Ji remained in the chair. For a moment, Nian Bing thought his master was playing a prank on him because the older man did not snore like he usually did. Reality dawned on the boy, and his heart sank. He fell to his knees and bitterly called his master. However, the only sound in his ears was the pattering of raindrops. His master had passed away. Nian Bing sobbed for a while before he saw a note beneath his master's lifeless arm. He picked it up and read it carefully. His master's last words expressed regret for his inability to wait for the boy's fish stew. Later that evening, Nian Bing packed his belongings and laid his master's lifeless body in the wooden cabin. He promised to finish what his master could not do as long as he was alive. When he had achieved that goal, he would return to lay his master's body to rest. After the parting words, he unsheathed the Scorch Blade and chanted a basic fire spell. A raging flame erupted from the Scorch Blade and set everything ablaze. Afterward, the boy walked into the distance and focused on his destination. He chanted another spell and activated the blizzard technique of the ice element. He exercised great control over the spell and propelled himself into the sky. At the ice god's pagoda, the mysterious woman detected the power fluctuations of the ice snow goddess's gem. The last time she felt it had been 8 years ago. This time, however, she would not send her subordinates but would personally go after the gem. In the ashy ruins of the cabin at the Peach Blossom Forest, there was a sudden movement, and a pale arm shot through the debris from below. It belonged to Master Jia, who had been playing possum. He was relieved that the silly boy did not burn his body to ash, and also remarked that the boy was ruthless for destroying everything. Nian Bing arrived in Ice Snow City and traveled to a familiar gate. It had been 8 years since his last visit. Surprisingly, the place remained unchanged. He stepped into the familiar courtyard and called Senior Hua Tian. However, there was yet to be a response. Therefore, he knocked on the door. A girl answered, which surprised him. She was beautiful, and he was certain he had never met her. The girl inquired about his identity and asked why he was looking for her master. In response, Nian Bing explained that his master had sent him. When the girl inquired about his master's identity, Nian Bing awkwardly said his master was once known as the Demon Chef. The girl realized that Nian Bing was Jiaji's student because her master Hua Tian often spoke about him. The girl was skeptical because she expected the old Demon Chef student to be a chubby dude. Nian Bing retorted and said it had been 8 years since then. Unconvinced, the girl demanded proof of identity. Otherwise, she would not let Nian Bing see her master. Nian Bing reluctantly revealed his ice blade, which the girl recognized immediately. He saw that the girl was convinced by the proof and asked her to lead him to see Senior Hua Tian. The girl gazed at him once before asking him to follow. Nian Bing was ushered toward a memorial shrine with fresh offerings and incense. The name on the shrine was Hua Tian. Nian Bing was saddened to learn that the divine blacksmith had passed away. The girl explained that her master passed away 2 years ago. Hua Tian had been her teacher for 5 years, and she was sad that she could not repay his generosity. Nian Bing sighed gloomily and said no one could control death. Senior Hua Tian died, and so did his master. The girl was shocked to receive the news. Nian Bing suddenly kowtowed before the shrine and expressed his grief. He never expected that the first time he saw the blacksmith would also be the last. Afterward, he wished for the divine blacksmith to rest in peace. When the girl saw his gesture, she asked for his name. Nian Bing introduced himself. The girl promptly introduced herself, and her name was Feng Nu. A moment later, Nian Bing said he had some business with the blacksmith before unsheathing the scorch blade. Feng Nu recognized it immediately as Nian Bing proudly announced that it had been one of Hua Tian's masterpieces. Feng Nu was ecstatic because she could finally hold the renowned blade. Nian Bing explained that the blade was great. However, his ice blade was even better. The key difference was that the scorch blade lacked something. He paused before revealing the Fire Lord's gem. Feng Nu exclaimed as she examined the fire gem in her hand. On the other hand, Nian Bing was even more surprised when he noticed the reaction of the scorch blade and fire gem in the girl's hands. Both items were more active in her hands than when in his. Feng Nu returned the gem and said it was too active in her hands. Then Nian Bing asked if she knew anyone who could carve the gem onto the blade. Feng Nu sheepishly said that she didn't know anyone. However, she could do it. Nian Bing was skeptical. Therefore, he asked the girl to explain how Senior Hua Tian died. Feng Nu was frustrated by his suspicion and thought it was payback for questioning his identity. Feng Nu explained that she was 17 and born in the Clearwood Empire. Her parents were peasants. However, she lost them to a plague in a single year. She lived on the streets before she met Master Hua Tian 5 years ago. The blacksmith took her under his wing and passed all his skills to her. When he felt his body deteriorating, he persevered and started forging a new blade. When the forging was complete, he jumped into the fire, bonded his soul to the sword, and created a divine blade. Feng Nu explained that the older man's soul was fully bonded to the sword. Hua Tian's 9 infernos Du Qi became the blade's power source, and his soul became the sword's soul. As Feng Nu spoke, she drew a blade from its scabbard and explained that she named it the Heavenly Flame Sword. The fact that her blade was also made from the horn of a fire dragon was proof that she was who she claimed to be. Feng Nu sheathed her weapon and said it was no longer necessary for them to play mind games with each other. Nian Bing apologized and explained that his father had left him the Fire Lord's gem, and he needed to ensure it was not in the wrong hands. Feng Nu thanked him instead and explained that nothing was more exciting to a blacksmith than to craft a divine blade. She offered the Heavenly Flame Sword as collateral for the time she would take to carve the Fire Lord's gem into the scorched blade. Nian Bing politely declined the offer and expressed his desire to become friends because their masters were good friends. Feng Nu blushed and asked why he trusted her so quickly. Nian Bing remained silent. However, in his mind, he recalled the sensation he felt when the heavenly flame sword was unsheathed. Its power alone was enough to kill 5 of him. If Feng Nu wanted to steal the fire gem, she would do so effortlessly. She appreciated his trust and said the task would be completed in a month. She also promised to wait for Nian Bing's return if he needed to leave the city. The time frame made Nian Bing reconsider the collateral. He was shaken from his thoughts when Feng Nu's stomach growled audibly. She was embarrassed and played it off, making it seem like Nian Bing was hungry and asked him to stay over for lunch. Nian Bing scratched his head and volunteered to cook because he was the demon chef's disciple. Judging by her response, he understood Feng Nu's intentions. It was obvious that she had been waiting for him to step up. Feng Nu led him to the kitchen, where he found only rice. She sensed his disappointment and explained that she only made rice soup and apologized for the limited options. Nian Bing asked her not to worry because he would find something they could eat with the rice. When he gazed outside, he noticed some pigeons on the roof, which he sniped using ice needles. His actions put Feng Nu in a foul mood, and she expressed her disbelief at how cruel he was. In response, Nian Bing smiled and suggested she hold on to her words until he cooked. Only then could she give her opinion. Feng Nu continued grumbling as the chef prepared the meat. She witnessed the knife skills of a master chef and was impressed as Nian Bing carved the pigeon meat. She had never seen a knife wielded with such speed and precision. Nian Bing's outstanding blade skills caused her to wonder whether he had practiced martial arts. The chef separated the bones before explaining that his knife skills could only process meat. He was not a martial artist like Feng Nu, who inherited a divine blacksmith's 9 infernos du qi. Nian Bing pulled out a needle, channeled his fire magic into it, and pierced through a grain of rice. His hands blurred as he repeated the action at unbelievable speed. Feng Nu, on the other hand, witnessed the impossible. Nian Bing was using meat thread from the pigeon to strand the rice together. She immediately thought that Nian Bing was no longer cooking but making art. Afterward, Feng Nu exclaimed in shock and said that no ordinary chef could do what he just did within a day. Moreover, they would never do anything like it. Nian Bing scoffed before explaining that the meat would no longer be edible after a day. He explained that the appearance of the food did not matter, but the taste was always the priority. Feng Nu was mesmerized by his focus and skills and momentarily thought he was handsome. She soon regained her composure and asked where he would go after lunch. Nian Bing stated his intention to visit and learn from the 2 famous restaurants in the city. Feng Nu was familiar with the specific restaurants and asked how long Nian Bing would stay in the city. He looked at her puzzled and caused her to blush involuntarily. Nian Bing turned to check on the food, while Feng Nu mustered the courage to explain that she needed to know his whereabouts because they were friends. Nian Bing said he would stay until the work on the Scorchblade was complete. After that, he would travel to every corner of the world. Nian Bing seemed absent-minded and mumbled, 8 years of practice and 8 years of understanding. He had practiced for 8 years and needed to comprehend what he learned. However, he wondered if he could reach every corner of the world in only 8 years. Feng Nu momentarily considered his words and said she did not think fame was good. Her master, Hua Tian, was once a star of this world. Every general from every empire was honored to have a handcrafted weapon, but afterward, they each attempted to restrain him in their territories to craft weapons for them. He would never have retired in a small cottage if it were not for his fame. Hua Tian once told Feng Nu while crafting her sword that no matter what profession she had, she needed the power to support it to the highest level. Otherwise, she would become a puppet for the rich. Lunch was finally ready, and Feng Nu did not stand on ceremony and eagerly tasted the dish. The delicious flavor caused her to admit that although she felt sorry for the pigeons, the meal was too tasty. Nian Bing accepted the compliment. However, what happened next left him speechless. He wanted a second helping but watched as Feng Nu emptied the entire rice bowl. He awkwardly turned to her with the empty rice bowl and explained that the meal portions included her dinner, yet she had eaten everything. In response, she said all she ever had was rice soup daily, and she deserved a full meal for a change. She also argued that Nian Bing should have mentioned her dinner portion earlier. Nian Bing remained silent, and when he turned to leave, Feng Nu stopped him and asked for another favor. She explained that things had been quiet around the workshop since her master passed away. She asked whether he could visit the place more often before blushing. Feng Nu hurriedly explained that she only had simple thoughts and was not harboring other ideas. She did not want him to misunderstand. In response, Nian Bing scratched his head before laughing and saying he knew she only wanted him to make dinner later. Nian Bing left the workshop and sighed heavily. He was disappointed with himself for saying yes like a simp. He was determined to leave Ice Snow City immediately and thought he should avoid girls. Nian Bing walked through the streets of Ice Snow City and soon arrived at the Grand Pavilion's entrance. Two hostesses noticed Nian Bing's good looks and wondered about his origin. Nian Bing said he knew how to make starters after asking whether the Grand Pavilion needed a new chef. When the short-haired hostess asked which culinary school he attended, Nian Bing looked puzzled because he had no answer for her. In response, the hostess dismissed him and said the Grand Pavilion was not where he could just come as he pleased. The manager approached and asked what was happening, so the hostess explained that she had just asked the boy to leave. The manager's name was Liao. He glared at Nian Bing and insulted him, saying the boy did not even deserve to clean his shoes. Nian Bing silently glared at Liao when a horse suddenly appeared beside him. The rider was a redhead with a heroic demeanor, and she mocked the manager by asking when he started wearing shoes. Her name was Zhuai Jing. Manager Liao retorted, saying she should not think she could get away with the insult because of her father's identity. Zhuai Jing scoffed and said the Grand Pavilion was a joke. Manager Liao noticed Nian Bing lingering and hit him with his hand fan before demanding that the boy leave. Suddenly, a fiery energy struck his hand and disarmed him. The energy had been released by Zhuai Jing, who referred to the manager as a dog that had not learned its lesson. Suddenly, the senior manager of the Grand Pavilion appeared and asked Zhuai Jing to let go of the matter. He was also Liao's elder brother. Manager Liao complained and asked his brother to teach the girl a lesson. To his surprise, the man glared at him and ordered him to return to the restaurant. The senior manager then turned to Zhuai Jing and said that the Grand Pavilion and the Pure Wind House had always lived peacefully alongside each other and that he thought they should keep it that way. Zhuai Jing agreed with a faint smile and said if she saw Manager Liao picking on someone else, a lesson would be waiting for him. She turned her horse to leave before noticing Nian Bing's blank expression, which made her comment that men were useless. Zhuai Jing impulsively offered Nian Bing a job as a woodchopper at the Pure Wind House. Nian Bing, on the other hand, could not believe his luck. He said he had experience chopping wood for years. When he made eye contact, she snapped at him and asked him to follow as they left for the Pure Wind House. Along the way, Nian Bing and Zhuai Jing had prejudiced thoughts about each other. When they arrived at their destination, an attendant reported to Zhuai Jing that the Grand Mage, Longling, had been waiting for her. Zhuai Jing excitedly asked where Longling could be found before telling the attendant that she had brought Nian Bing from the streets. She reminded the attendant that the restaurant needed a woodcutter and that Nian Bing should be assigned to the job. Nian Bing overheard the conversation, but the mention of a Grand Mage piqued his interest. An old attendant introduced himself at the firewood chopping room before explaining that Zhuai Jing always had that temper. Despite that, she had a soft heart. Nian Bing took the opportunity to ask whether Grand Mages were powerful. In response, the older man named Li had a serious expression when he said that Grand Mages were not simply powerful. Long Ling was the daughter of the head of the Mage Guild in the Ice Moon Empire. She was an exceptional young lady who had achieved the level of a Grand Mage at a tender age and was also a close friend to Zhuai Jing. Nian Bing felt fortunate because the Ice Moon Empire's Mage Guild was in Ice Snow City. He was still determining his level. However, if he had to guess, he would say he was almost at the level of a Grand Mage. Nian Bing needed to learn elemental ice spells. Otherwise, he would not know what to do with his power. Nian Bing could only infer some low-level ice spells from his fire spells. However, he could not do the same for level 3 and higher spells. Therefore, he would greatly benefit if he could study the spell books of the Mage Guild. Once he finished the day's tasks, Nian Bing went into the city to do some shopping. His first stop would be the Mage Guild. As he gazed at the magnificent building, he heard the hooves of a trotting horse and instinctively moved out of the way. The rider was a bespectacled girl with purple hair. When she arrived at the guild, a young man greeted her enthusiastically and asked why she had taken long to return. The girl's name was Long Ling. She told the young man that she had dinner at the Pure Wind House, and the food from that restaurant was her favorite. Nian Bing had overheard the conversation from a few meters away and immediately knew the girl's identity. So he swiftly interrupted the duo as they prepared to enter the building and asked whether he was in the right place. Long Ling replied affirmatively and asked how she could be of help. Nian Bing went straight to the point and inquired about the requirements for studying the magic books from the guild's library. The young man beside Long Ling explained that only personnel of the Mage Guild could access the library. Even so, the books one could access depended on their current level. The young man then inquired whether Nian Bing was a mage, to which Nian Bing replied affirmatively and said he was an ice mage. He then asked whether he could read the books in the guild. His father, Rong Tian, taught him most fire spells below level 8. What Nian Bing needed at that moment was ice spells. The young man replied that Nian Bing could be granted access if he was not a member of any other guild. However, he would first be tested in the Mage Guild and assigned a mage rank according to his score. Considering Nian Bing's appearance, the young man exposed his prejudice by assuming that Nian Bing was weak. Long Ling shook her senior's arm and pleaded for him to give Nian Bing a chance. However, the young man said it was a late hour, and Nian Bing should return the following day. Nian Bing sensed the young man's reluctance and resorted to flattery. He addressed the young man as a grand mage and asked for assistance because he had duties the following morning. The young man was easily flattered and immediately agreed to help Nian Bing. Despite the late hour, he asked Nian Bing to follow him into the guild as Long Ling praised him for his kindness. While they walked toward the guild, the young man introduced himself. His name was Xu Ju, and he was an earth element mage. Nian Bing also introduced himself respectfully. Once inside, Xu Ju instructed Long Ling to take Nian Bing to the testing chamber before leaving to check for any free elder to conduct the test. Long Ling took the opportunity to apologize on behalf of the guild for her senior's strange behavior. She hoped that Nian Bing would not take offense. When Nian Bing addressed her as a grand mage, the title made Long Ling pout. She did not wish to be addressed that way because she had not yet been tested. She explained that her father never allowed any of his students to be tested until they reached the level of grand mage. That was because it was a shame for them to get a score below grand mage. She introduced herself, said she was an ice mage, and asked why Nian Bing did not possess a mage's coat. In response, Nian Bing narrated how he was born into a poor family and acquired his skills from an unknown mage that he met. Long Ling excitedly said that Nian Bing would receive a mage's coat once the guild test was passed. He would have to be at least at the intermediate mage's level to do so. As she opened the door to the testing chamber, Nian Bing assured her he would pass the test. A moment later, Xu Ju returned with an elder named Elder Li Dai, a water element mage. Nian Bing bowed to him respectfully, and in response, the elder mage preferred to skip the pleasantries. He stretched his hand and asked Nian Bing to channel his power into it at the maximum level. Elder Li explained that it was necessary to determine the strength of the young man's abilities. Nian Bing did as he was instructed and shut his eyes to concentrate. An icy blue aura erupted from his body, causing the elder mage to exclaim in shock. He did not expect the young man to possess such pure ice elemental power, which had reached his body and frozen his water element. At that point, Elder Lida had used much effort to resist the invasion. He also felt Nian Bing's power was endless and limitless. Although the elder was at the rank of a sorcerer, it took him a great effort to resist Nian Bing's power. A moment later, the elder asked about the identity of Nian Bing's teacher. The young man explained that he did not have a teacher. However, he had learned how to meditate from an unknown mage, and afterward continued training by himself. After his explanation, he asked whether he had passed the test. In response, the elder said the test was not yet over, and asked Nian Bing to attack with his most powerful spell, because it was not just about power. Nian Bing had a severe expression, channeled the power of the ice goddess gem, and activated a spell. Long Ling exclaimed in shock when she recognized the spell. It was the level 4 ice spell, Blizzard. It was an area of effect spell she had learned to cast recently. Long Ling knew that the fact that Nian Bing could use the spell meant that his power could rival her own. Nian Bing's masterful control over the Blizzard spell shocked the elder inwardly. In response, he cast the Aqua Wall spell to offset part of the power of Nian Bing's spell. Xu Ju watched and ignorantly said the spell was not a genuine Blizzard spell because of its small size. However, Long Ling reminded him that her father, the Guildmaster, had explained that the Blizzard spell could be used as a single target spell if the caster had dominant control over the spell. Nian Bing's versatile control over the Blizzard spell left everyone in a state of shock. Long Ling said that his control was inhuman, while Xu Ju expressed his surprise that the Blizzard spell could be used in such a manner. The greater intensity of the spell caused Elder Lead to activate a triple aqua barrier. Nian Bing's focus intensified, and he pushed the Blizzard spell to break through the Elder's barrier. He had a content smile when he noticed the defense breaking, and felt he could use the spell a bit longer. At that moment, the Elder realized that the boy was not only testing himself, but was challenging him as a sorcerer. Elder Lead's expression darkened briefly before he released a powerful surge of magical energy. At the same time, he chided Nian Bing for having extremely high expectations. At that moment, something strange happened. Nian Bing noticed the ice in his blizzard spell was liquefying. The elder's body also partially melted as he evaded the blizzard spell and flew toward his opponent like a wraith. The elder's water element overpowered Nian Bing's ice and blasted the boy back a few meters. The elder's voice emerged from the converging water element and congratulated Nian Bing for his efforts as the elder's body was reformed from the water. He explained that Nian Bing's level 4 spell forced him to use a level 7 water spell called Hydration. He praised Nian Bing's control over his power, which could rival his own. However, the boy fell short because his mana was still at the level of a Grand Mage. The elder's words shocked the two onlookers. Longling was shocked to hear the elder's assessment. Nian Bing calmly thanked Elder Lida and said he finally understood the difference in their powers from their earlier clash. Elder Lida said it was the first time he had seen anyone with such gifts before asking Nian Bing to return home. When Nian Bing asked about his score, Elder Lida asked him to return the following day because the guildmaster would be happy to meet the new star. Nian Bing happily thanked the elder and left as he exited the guild halls. Elder Lida said that the boy was gifted for having such incredible mana at such an age. At his age, he explained that although Nian Bing's mana was similar to Long Ling's, the control of his spells was far more powerful than hers. The elder could tell the boy's mental abilities were close to a sorcerer's. Therefore, he could be given the title of a Grand Mage. Elder Lida also explained that the guildmaster, Long Ling's father, did not allow her to take a similar test because her control over her spells was insufficient, and she needed more practice. Long Ling was impressed by the power of the blizzard spell, but she was more surprised that the elder had cast a level 7 spell without chanting. In response, Elder Lida asked whether she was making fun of him, because not even the guildmaster could cast a level 7 spell without chanting. The elder explained that he had used a level 7 spell scroll and lamented that the test had been so expensive this time. Shiju, slightly irritated by all the praise that Nian Bing had received, said that the young man had probably used a scroll. He was speechless when Elder Lida chided him and said he could tell the difference. The elder also proposed a test. He offered Shiju a blizzard scroll and asked whether the boy could control it like Nian Bing had just done. When the elder left for his quarters, Long Ling said she had not seen him laugh for a long time. However, he had done so earlier. When Shiju suggested they go for snacks, Long Ling said she realized how far behind she had fallen in her practice and could not compete with people her age. Her eyes then showed strange determination to begin practicing. Shiju was left alone and frustrated because Nian Bing had just arrived, yet had already grabbed Long Ling's attention. Nian Bing left the Mage Guild with a silly grin on his face. He could not believe that he was already at the level of a Grand Mage. It was both surprising and exciting because he had long since dreamt of that day that he would become a mage. He suddenly remembered Long Ling's words about getting a robe and buying one himself. At the side of the street, he spotted a merchant selling all sorts of clothing, and among them was a long robe. He bought and wore it. However, he felt silly when he put it on because it was oversized and came with a mask. At the Grand Pavilion, a woman shouted, pleading for the manager to leave her alone. However, the arrogant manager retorted, asking how she dared to defy him. He said she ought to feel lucky to serve him. Suddenly, a boot connected with his rear, causing Manager Liao to turn around with an enraged expression, demanding to know who kicked him. To his surprise, he found his brothers, the first and second managers of Grand Pavilion. Liao's second elder brother advised him to go to the brothel for fun. However, he would be punished if he continued messing around at the Grand Pavilion. The two men had come to inform Liao that they would have an important customer the following day and ought to be at their best. As they left, the short man asked Liao not to mess around if he did not want to help. Manager Liao cursed because of his terrible luck. Afterward, he dragged the woman to a secluded alley where no one could hear or help her. The young woman grew desperate and called for help. At the same time, Manager Liao announced that no one would rescue her because no one dared challenge him. Then, he noticed a masked, hooded figure with overflowing robes. The hooded figure slowly approached him and sarcastically remarked that it was lovely that he had encountered Manager Liao from the Grand Pavilion. Manager Liao addressed the hooded figure and ordered him to leave. However, the hooded figure said that what the manager was doing was embarrassing and outdated, which meant that the man was garbage in a gang. Liao retorted, saying that the hooded figure was out of their mind to insult him. The hooded figure scoffed, telling Liao that the girl was unwilling, yet he wanted to do it by force. Afterward, he asked Liao to leave because he did not want to dirty his hands. In response, Manager Liao released a bright fiery aura from his body. While enraged, he declared that he would destroy the hooded figure. In response, the hooded man conjured a fireball in his right hand. Manager Liao realized that the hooded man was a mage and asked about his true identity, the hooded mage. The hooded man replied that his name was none of his business, and people like him deserved to be killed. He then gave Manager Liao one last chance to leave. However, Liao's body erupted with a bright, fiery dou qi before declaring he could kill the mage. When Liao closed the distance, the hooded mage shot the fireball toward the arrogant manager. Liao thought the attack was a simple fireball and claimed he could easily handle it. However, as he swiped with his fan, the fireball's trajectory changed and flanked him. Suddenly, an ice needle pierced through his forehead and impaled him through the head. The instant lobotomy froze the manager's body in place as the fireball engulfed his body. The young woman witnessed the fatality and fled the scene in horror, screaming that there had been a murder. Suddenly, the hooded mage felt a sharp killing, intent locking onto him, and a blade quickly slashed at his back. His new opponent was the slain manager's second elder brother. In response, the hooded mage assassin grabbed the hilt of his blade and slashed at his opponent's blade at a blinding speed. The assailant's blade was instantly shattered, and the man expressed disbelief that his younger brother had been eliminated. He addressed the hooded mage and asked if he was one of the people from the mage's guild that backed the Pure Wind House. The hooded mage replied dismissively, saying the restaurant could not order him. When the man asked for the hooded mage's identity, the mage said that he was a killer of Manager Liao and should be addressed as the judger. The hooded mage released a flame barrier after saying he had already killed someone that day and was unwilling to kill another. However, his opponent was unwilling to let him go. He covered his body with dou qi and charged to intercept the mage's escape route. Despite his best effort, the massive flames engulfed him and stopped him in his tracks, causing him to lose his target. Elsewhere on a deserted street, the hooded mage leaned against a wall to catch his breath. While removing his mask, he contemplated that it was the first time he had experienced the dou qi of a warrior. The secret identity of the hooded mage was, of course, Nian Bing. Blood seeped from the corner of his mouth as he assessed his body's injuries. The dou qi from his opponent's blade had left him with minor internal injuries. He would have died if he had not shattered the sword with his ice blade. It was fortunate that he had learned how to heal himself with magic. Once he recovered, he carried the cloak and returned to the Pure Wind House. He sought a place to hide the robe and mask when he overheard some noise coming from the next room. He peeked from behind a wall and noticed that Shui Jing was still practicing at that late hour. When he turned to leave, Shui Jing sensed his presence and demanded that he reveal himself. Nian Bing awkwardly stepped out from behind the wall and explained his whereabouts. He had gone to the city to shop but did not buy anything because everything was too expensive. Shui Jing remarked that she hoped it was true and that he would not betray the Pure Wind House. Nian Bing laughed nervously and asked to be excused by the young mistress. However, Shui Jing did not let him leave. Nian Bing's body stiffened as he wondered if she had seen him disposing of the gown and mask in the bush. Shui Jing suddenly grabbed his collar and ran at top speed. Nian Bing panicked and thought he had been discovered as they leaped across rooftops. When they arrived at their destination, Shui Jing asked him to stay put and avoid any movement. He naturally wondered what she wanted. After a drawn-out period of silence, the girl asked why he wasn't speaking. Nian Bing suddenly slipped on a tile, and Shui Jing instinctively stretched her arm toward him to break his fall. The resulting scene was of Nian Bing in the young lady's arms. After a momentary pause, he thanked her for saving him. Shui Jing blushed after making eye contact and suddenly slapped him, demanding he let go. She then threw a tantrum as Nian Bing watched in confusion. He tried to apologize with a distinct palm print on his right cheek. Shui Jing asked why he had moved, so Nian Bing explained that she had scared him. Shui Jing said it was his fault for remaining silent for an hour. After a round of bickering, Shui Jing asked where he came from. Nian Bing explained that he was initially from the Huarun Empire. It was also considered the Empire of Flames. Shui Jing asked how he wound up in the Ice Moon Empire, considering the distance between the two empires. Nian Bing explained that he had left with his parents. However, he was now alone. Shui Jing had a gloomy expression as if she could relate when Nian Bing asked whether she was alone. She explained that she wasn't feeling well and wanted to talk with someone. She then requested him to stop addressing her as Mrs. and use her name instead. Shui Jing then described her futile attempt at sharing her problem with Long Ling. Her friend did not understand and only left her more confused. Right then, she asked for Nian Bing's name, and he gave it. She suddenly changed her attitude and asked how a girl could make a boy like her. Nian Bing responded with a generic answer saying that guys would like a girl like her. When she asked why a particular guy did not like her, Nian Bing suppressed his irritation. He suggested that she ask the man how he felt about her. He then advised her to stay close to the guy she liked and talk to him often. Nian Bing endured a whole night of Shui Jing's rambling about the guy she wanted, and soon it was dawn when he returned to the Pure Wind House. Old Man Li was surprised to see Nian Bing looking like a zombie. Nian Bing shuddered when he had to explain to the older man. Old Man Li led him to the kitchen and introduced him to the main chef of the Pure Wind House, Chef Ming. Once the introductions were complete, Nian Bing noticed the chef's black scarf and realized that this chef was very skilled. He then bit into a dumpling and had a disappointed expression because what he had just eaten was considered breakfast at that place. Shui Jing suddenly burst into the kitchen and asked what Chef Ming had for her that morning. After some pleasantries, she explained to the chef that she wished to have onion rings as a snack. She then whispered something into Chef Ming's ear, which made the man gaze at Nian Bing with a cautious expression with a look of suspicion. The chef turned and walked towards some curtains as Shui Jing followed, asking Nian Bing to follow them. The other junior chefs were surprised and wondered about Nian Bing's identity because no one could watch the head chef's cooking. They naturally wondered how the boy had become the chef's assistant. Shui Jing gave Nian Bing a knowing smile, and he realized she was creating a chance for him to learn from the chef. When he asked about her intention, she said it was payment for the slap. She reminded Nian Bing to make the opportunity count because many wanted to learn from Chef Ming. If he could learn a few tricks, he would not need to worry about his job if he was skilled at cooking. Shui Jing promised to ask Chef Ming to recruit him to the kitchen. In response, Nian Bing teased her, saying he had just realized she was a bit cute. However, she asked him to shut up and kicked him, saying she only tried to apologize for slapping him. Nian Bing was impressed when he saw the exquisite layout of the Pure Wind House's kitchen. Its sheer size was more significant than his old house. Nian Bing and Shui Jing followed the chef as he ushered them into his private cooking area. When Nian Bing stepped through the curtain, Shui Jing explained that Chef Ming rarely cooked, and only important guests could try his delicacies. However, she was the exception. Nian Bing frowned slightly as he thought about the setup with curtains blocking the view. It was clear that Chef Ming did not want anyone to see him cook. Naturally, Nian Bing found this selfish and wondered how they could all progress if they were unwilling to share. Chef Ming began preparing the ingredients and asked Nian Bing to pay attention because he would only demonstrate the process once. He mixed water and flour and added a little bit of salt. The boy watched as the chef kneaded the dough quickly. His technique was fast and accurate. The first impression convinced Nian Bing that he was in the right place. Chef Ming continued kneading the dough masterfully as he heated a pan of hot oil. Chef Ming then used a unique technique that Nian Bing recognized immediately. It helped rush through hours of fermentation and shrink them to 15 minutes. Nian Bing had a faint grin when he realized what the chef was doing. Chef Ming was moving incredibly fast as he worked with the dough, and it would have been challenging for ordinary people to follow his movement. However, Nian Bing was not just any ordinary man. He was the old demon chef's last disciple. He watched as the chef retrieved thin slices of dough, dipped them in the hot oil, and curled them into rings in the hot, simmering oil. Chef Ming then used a strainer to remove all the rings from the pan and served them in a bowl. He then invited Shui Jing to try them out. The girl was excited and said her uncle's skills were the best. While she was distracted, Nian Bing took one of the fried rings and put it in his mouth and instinctively assessed it. His master, Jia Ji, had once taught him to do so. He said the ring was fragrant, crispy, and shattered at the touch. It was incredible. Shui Jing, however, did not appreciate his initiative and yelled at him for touching her breakfast. Nian Bing grinned in response and said the chef's skills were excellent, and he could not control himself. He then recited the oral procedure of making the crisp ring. Chef Ming was shocked and demanded to know his identity. The chef also asked how Nian Bing knew the oral recipe for the snack. Nian Bing tried to lie by saying he had heard it from a chef on the streets. It sounded good, so he memorized it. However, Chef Ming had none of it. His aura was intimidating, as he said that Nian Bing was lying to the wrong person because he would not have his job if everyone knew the formula. Right then, one of the employees of the Pure Wind House budged into the kitchen and announced that there was an emergency. He had just received information that the city's governor had sealed off Ice Snow City, and no one was allowed in or out. The Grand Pavilion had closed that day because their third manager had passed away the previous night. Shui Jing was shocked by the news and wondered what was happening. Chef Ming advised her not to panic and instead seek her father because he would know more about what was happening. As Shui Jing hurriedly left with the chef, she asked Nian Bing to go back to his quarters and she would find him later. Nian Bing had been planning to stay in the city longer. However, it seemed like he could no longer hide his skills. Nian Bing still did not know the best cuisine of the Grand Pavilion. However, he would stay with Feng Nu at the blacksmith's workshop if he could no longer hide in the open. Afterward, he would leave the city after completing the Scorchblade's grade. He had doubts about the nature of the order to close off the city, but he was not convinced Liao's death would make that much noise. The mysterious woman from the Ice God's pagoda had arrived at Ice Snow City. She was the Frost Priestess and asked the whereabouts of the master of the Martial Guild. After a negative report, she ordered all Ice Snow City's elites to find the Ice Snow Goddess gem within 3 days. If the wielder was really powerful, all they had to do was find him, and she would deal with him. The city's governor tried to protest about the insane deadline. However, Frost Priestess threatened to remove him from his position as governor. The governor, Marquis Noah, explained quickly that he had no intention of questioning her order. However, they needed information, without which they could not promise to find anything. The Frost Priestess said she could feel the power of the Ice Snow Goddess gem the previous night, and if they could not get the job done, she would find someone else who could. At that moment, Manager Liao's second elder brother respectfully bowed to the mysterious woman. He said that he had something that could be of interest to her. An older man asked him to be quiet. Still, the Frost Priestess said it was all right if it had something to do with the Ice Snow Goddess gem. The man proceeded with his explanation and said that a mage had assassinated his brother the previous night. When the Frost Priestess asked about the elemental magic of the assassin, the man said he was not sure, but he thought it was a fireball. The older man reprimanded him for wasting time. However, the man explained that a fireball spell had burnt his brother's body, but the head was not charred. Instead, it was covered in ice. The Frost Priestess approached the corpse and performed a spiritual scan. A man stood silently on the side and noticed the spell had been cast silently. He was the master of Ice Moon Empire's mage guild, Long Zi. He felt slightly intimidated and thought it was no wonder she was considered the most powerful mage on the continent. The Frost Priestess completed casting her spell and asked for an explanation about the previous night's events. She was informed about the alias of the mysterious mage assassin called the Judger. After pondering, she concluded that there must have been more than one person acting with him. She then complimented the man for finding something strange about his brother's corpse. She said he was right because the real cause of his brother's death was not the fireball but the ice magic which impaled the head. The Frost Priestess concluded that the weapon was like a needle, and she could detect a trace of the Frost Queen's energy from the frozen wound. She continued analyzing it and said the mysterious ice mage had great control over the spell. He had compressed the ice element into a needle and penetrated the most rigid bone in the human body. She speculated that the assassin was at least a sorcerer-ranked mage, and the fire mage was only a cover-up. There were, in fact, 2 killers working together. The Frost Priestess ordered Long Zi to gather up all the ice sorcerers within the city, and any who had the scent of the Ice Snow Goddess gem would be the culprit. Long Zi plainly stated that he did not think the killer was anyone from the Mage Guild. The guild master reminded the Frost Priestess that mages received high positions on the continent. He did not believe a sorcerer-ranked mage would kill Manager Liao, or even the combination of 2 mages, which was suspicious. The Frost Priestess admitted that he had a point. However, she ordered him to bring every ice mage within the city to her. In the meantime, the mages from the guild were meant to guard the city's 4 gates. Long Zi complied without any hesitation. As he teleported away, the Frost Priestess thought about how Long Zi had improved his skill. His control over the wind element was exceptional. Under her guidance, he could become another divine priest within 20 years. However, she did not feel it necessary to do all that. 3 days passed, and with Shui Jing's help, Nian Bing became Chef Ming's student. From then on, no one else at the Pure Wind House spoke to him except Li. This change did not bother Nian Bing because things had become quieter for him. Walking through the streets, he overheard that the blockade had ended, and the governor had reopened the city. The stranger said that all the mages and soldiers had been looking for someone in the past few days, but never found him. Nian Bing knew he had been the one everyone was looking for, and concluded he could not use the Ice Snow Goddess gem as often as he pleased. As the Frost Priestess left, she thanked the governor for helping with the search. She was sure the one who possessed the gem had left the city. However, she was determined to maintain the search efforts. The Frost Priestess asked the governor to report if he found anything. She then turned to Long Zi and asked him to watch for ice sorcerers. The city governor and the master of the Mage Guild saluted her as she casually departed on a conjured snowflake under her feet, on which she soared into the sky. Once her aura disappeared into the horizon, the governor sighed deeply and offered to buy Long Zi a meal at the Pure Wind House. He had been nervous for the past few days and felt like the Frost Priestess would have skinned him alive. Long Zi admitted that he shared the same sentiment and offered to buy the food this time. At the blacksmith's workshop, Nian Bing returned with cooking supplies. Feng Nu peered through the scaffolding and went to receive him. As they walked through the workshop, Nian Bing explained that he planned to visit, but he had been caught up with all the work he had to do. He offered to prepare a meal to apologize. Feng Nu said she had only been joking and wasn't planning to eat his food because she did not know how she would survive without him if she indulged herself too much. Nian Bing looked slightly puzzled as he gazed at her, and only then did Feng Nu realize what she had said and blushed. She quickly regained her composure and asked Nian Bing to stop daydreaming and enter the workshop. Nian Bing was instantly mesmerized when he watched her feminine figure enter the workshop. However, he quickly snapped out of it and rushed in before her. Feng Nu watched him get to work as she thought she already had her unique sword, which was a divine weapon, and she did not need to be greedy with his fire gem. Feng Nu chose to be content with what she had when Nian Bing announced that the food was ready. Feng Nu said she could not tell whether it was food or art. She quickly took a bite and immediately shed tears of joy and said she would probably become a picky eater after eating Nian Bing's dishes. When Nian Bing tried to explain his method of food preparation, Feng Nu dismissed him and said she was only interested in eating. She later asked whether Nian Bing knew someone in the city because he mentioned he had things to do. Feng Nu was stunned when Nian Bing said he found a job at the Pure Wind House. Feng Nu said it was a popular and expensive restaurant within the city, and with Nian Bing's skills, he would become the best chef in the restaurant. However, Nian Bing's reply shook her to choke on the food. He mentioned that she and his master alone had tasted his cooking. He was only a woodchopper at the Pure Wind House, and because of this, Feng Nu frowned once she had recovered and said Nian Bing had taken the joke too far. Nian Bing patted her on the back and handed her a water bowl. Feng Nu asked whether he was mad for taking the job of a woodchopper. In response, Nian Bing said that it was all right because he did not want to show his cooking skills. If the restaurant discovered his talent, he would likely be unable to leave Ice Snow City. Feng Nu was momentarily stunned and asked whether he would leave Ice Snow City. Nian Bing remained silent and did not respond. The silence was so thick one could cut it with a butter knife. Nian Bing was uncertain about what to say, while Feng Nu, on the other hand, turned away to hide that she was blushing. Afterward, Nian Bing stood to leave and said he would return after a few days. Suddenly, Feng Nu asked why he was in a hurry. When Nian Bing turned and looked at her pretty face and longing eyes, he realized he was in trouble because he felt he would stay forever if he stayed there any longer. Feng Nu watched his departing figure, and she still thought it was ridiculous that he was chopping wood, despite being the demon chef's successor. Regardless, she found him fascinating and wondered what the elders of her clan would think if she brought him back when she returned. When Nian Bing returned to the Mage Guild, Elder Lead welcomed him. He grinned awkwardly and scratched his head when the elder said he had been waiting for his return. Elder Lida ushered the boy into a room where 5 other elders were waiting. Each of them wore a mage robe of a different color, and at the moment, their shared interest was to see the boy that Elder Lida had tested. Nian Bing saluted and regarded them as seniors, saying it was an honor to meet them. The elder dressed in the fiery red mage robe said there was no need for Nian Bing to address them as such because there was no first in learning, and the best was the biggest. The elderly mage said he was only an intermediate mage when he was Nian Bing's age. Afterward, he officially welcomed the boy into the guild. According to the rules, if a mage below the intermediate rank joined the guild, a grand mage would be enough to host the rituals. However, Nian Bing was a grand mage. Therefore, he required at least an older sorcerer to host the ritual. Even so, the guild master was away working, which meant Elder Lead was responsible for hosting the ritual for the youngest grand mage. Elder Lead requested Nian Bing to stand at the center of a magic circle, which glowed with a faint golden light. He recited the guild's vows for Nian Bing and asked if the young mage would agree to honor every clause. Nian Bing pondered the implication of the vow for a moment before realizing that the guild might restrict his freedom in the future. However, he agreed to take the vow. He had crossed his mental fingers. When Elder Lide announced the ritual's completion, The elder with white mage robes condensed magical energy in his palms and conjured a light blue mage robe and a pair of black gloves on Nian Bing's body. The young Grand Mage took a moment to examine his new appearance, while Elder Lead announced that Nian Bing was officially a mage in the Ice Moon Empire. The elder then handed Nian Bing a token of the Mage Guild and explained that he could use it to dispatch a squadron of under 2,000 personnel in any of the 9 great cities within the Ice Moon Empire. Nian Bing could earn a monthly allowance of 20 platinum coins from any Mage Guild branch. Nian Bing heard about the obscene amount of money he would get monthly and recalled his father saying it would be a dream to join a guild of mages in the future. Along with the token, the elder gave Nian Bing a staff named the Ice Edge. The elder explained that usually the guild would not provide such a high-level staff to a recruit. However, the guild master said that Nian Bing was the youngest Grand Mage, so he gave the boy the award of a sorcerer. The staff Nian Bing received was a piece of gold-ranked mage gear. Magical equipment in this world was ranked into several tiers. They were God rank, sub-God rank, dark gold, gold, silver, and bronze-ranked mage gear. Although the gold-ranked gear was only level 4 on the list, such gear would cost thousands of platinum coins on the market. The dark gold gear was rarely ever seen on the market. The God-ranked and sub-God-ranked mage gear was almost impossible to find. Even the guildmaster only had a sub-God-ranked magic staff. Elder Lead explained that it was said the only God-ranked gear in the Ice Moon Empire was in the Frost Priestess's hand, and no one knew what it was. As the elder spoke, Nian Bing only speculated that his ice blade was at least at the dark gold rank, and that the Ice Snow Goddess gem was better than the shard on his ice staff. Elder Lead then dismissed Nian Bing but reminded him that he needed to obey the guild's orders directly, and when the Ice Moon Empire was in danger, it was his duty to help. Nian Bing found it interesting that the guild's rights weighed more than the empire's. Elder Lead explained that the 5 empires had their mage guild on the continent, and the Ice Moon Empire was known as the one with the most powerful mages. The unknown mages of the Ice God's Pagoda did not share the same resources as the Mage Guild. Although hundreds of ice mages were in the Ice God's Pagoda, they received orders directly from the Frost Priestess. If the mages from the Ice God's Pagoda were not among those in the Ice Moon Empire, the Empire would have the weakest mages among the 5. In the Ice Moon Empire's Mage Guild was only 1 Magister, 8 Sorcerers, 39 Grand Mages, including Nian Bing, and about 1,000 lower-level mages. In the Harmonic Flower Empire, there were 3 Magisters. According to the intel received, the Elder Magister and the Empire's Prince was approaching the level of Divine Descendant. Nian Bing knew the Prince very well since he was the man who had sent mages after him and his father. Nian Bing's expression was grim when he recalled that sliver of memory from his past. Elder Lead explained that Nian Bing needed to be stronger so the Mages Guild would not fall. The man insisted that Nian Bing had to be powerful for the guild and the Empire. After the ceremony, a younger-looking elder chided Elder Lead for speaking too much. Elder Lead dismissed his fellow elders from the ritual before recalling that Nian Bing needed to learn more ice spells. He asked Nian Bing to follow him into the library as the elders departed. The one elder with a seemingly sharp tongue asked Nian Bing to visit his room later. The man's insistence made Nian Bing wonder whether something was wrong with him. In the library, the elder informed Nian Bing that the guild had prepared a room for him to rest. The boy would be free to go when there was no guild mission. Even so, the city-wide blockade had just ended, and avoiding walking around so much was best. Nian Bing innocently asked why there had been a blockade, and Elder Lead explained that some influential people had arrived at Ice Snow City and were looking for a mage gear known as the Ice Snow Goddess Gem. Nian Bing was startled and wondered how they knew the Ice Snow Goddess Gem was in the city. He speculated that the aura of the Morning Dew Blade had exposed his approximate location. Nian Bing realized that if he had used his ice blade during the blockade, the Frost Priestess would have caught him. Nian Bing realized that he needed to cover his tracks more carefully so that the Frost Priestess would never find him before he reached her level. Elder Lead concluded his explanation by saying the Frost Priestess could always recover the gem if it existed. He then asked Nian Bing to remain in the library and wait for the arrival of the Guildmaster. Before he left, Elder Lead informed Nian Bing that the library had 4 floors and Nian Bing could only access 3. Elder Lead cautioned the boy against attempting to enter the 4th level because the magic trap would kill him. Nian Bing smirked because the elder had overestimated him. Though he was a grand mage, his knowledge and understanding of ice magic was limited. His father had taught him the fire spells, so the elementary spells of the library's ground floor were sufficient for his use. Nian Bing spent hours reading through magic books until he heard the door open, naturally assuming that the guildmaster had arrived. However, it was only Longling. Considering his level, the girl wondered why Nian Bing was on the ground floor. Nian Bing explained that his understanding of magic was limited. Longling had been informed that Nian Bing had stayed in the library since noon. It was already time for dinner, and she proposed that Nian Bing could return to the library the following day. But first, they ought to go for dinner. Nian Bing asked whether the guildmaster was present, and Longling replied affirmatively, explaining that Guildmaster Long Zi had just returned from drinking and sent for Nian Bing once he learned that the boy was at the guild. A while later, Longling introduced Nian Bing to the guildmaster, who was also her father. Besides the guildmaster, Shiju was present and had a dull expression. Nian Bing greeted the guildmaster cheerfully. While Shiju scoffed, Long Jue welcomed Nian Bing to the dinner table. Opposite him at the table sat Long Ling, who announced her eagerness to start eating. Once everyone had settled, the guildmaster urged Nian Bing to consider the guild his home. Although it was nothing special, Nian Bing could always eat with them at the guild. The boy graciously agreed to the suggestion while Shiju glared at him between bites of his food. Later at the table, Guildmaster Long Zi suggested that Nian Bing should practice with his daughter often because they shared the same elemental magic. He then asked where Nian Bing came from and how long he had practiced magic. Nian Bing explained that he was from the Harmonic Flower Empire and left with his parents when he was young. He had been practicing magic for 10 years and had not received guidance from any mentor because he was often alone. Long Zi was surprised that Nian Bing had reached his current level without guidance. He speculated that Nian Bing would eventually surpass them all. Long Zi added that it had been long since Elder Lead praised anyone that much, and the elder had only good things to say about Nian Bing. Long Zi said that should Nian Bing have any questions, he could consult with the elders or with the guildmaster directly. Afterward, Long Zi asked where Nian Bing had been during the blockade. The boy realized that the guildmaster had received the intel from Elder Lead, yet was still asking. He thought that maybe the guildmaster had trust issues. Nian Bing explained that he had been living with his friend for 3 days during the blockade, and she owned a weapon shop in the city. The guildmaster asked which weapon shop he was referring to because he knew all the good weapons shops. Nian Bing explained that it was a small weapon shop called Shui Hua. Long Ling found the name a bit strange. However, Nian Bing confidently said that just as the shop's name suggested, it was a small, cheap weapons shop. A while later, Guildmaster Long Zi stood up and said that he had too much to drink in the afternoon, and also felt tired from the blockading period. He had announced that he would retire for the night. He asked his daughter and Shiju to look after Nian Bing before saying that the boy's room was ready, and suggested that they show him where it was when they finished eating. Nian Bing soon finished his meal and asked his new acquaintances about what would come next. Long Ling got up and said the food at the guild was getting worse, and suggested to Nian Bing that they should visit the Pure Wind House when he had time. Shiju asked her to take it easy because he would take Nian Bing back to his room. The two young men walked silently side by side through the guild hall. They soon arrived before a door which Shiju unlocked and said it was now Nian Bing's new bedroom. Nian Bing took off his mage robe and bid his senior goodbye when suddenly Shiju's demeanor changed, and dense magical energy surrounded his body. His expression turned into a smirk, and he asked why Nian Bing was in a hurry. In response, Nian Bing asked what he was trying to do. Shiju said he needed to teach the newcomer the rules of survival at the guild, while his expression appeared almost menacing. Shiju said there were some rules that Nian Bing needed to follow while at the Mage Guild. When the latter asked what they were, Shiju explained that the rules were straightforward. Nian Bing's identity had changed ever since he joined the guild. However, he was still a newcomer and needed to focus on practicing magic and not on anything else. Specifically, Nian Bing could not get too close to some people. Shiju spoke those words while his expression shifted uncomfortably. He explained that he had been at the guild for 20 years and knew how things worked. Therefore, he could help Nian Bing in the future. Nian Bing suppressed a laugh because of how easy Shiju's mind was to read. However, he decided to play dumb and asked what the latter meant because he did not understand. Shiju's response was explosive when he wondered whether Nian Bing was stupid. This time, he spoke clearly and stated that Nian Bing was prohibited from having relations. Nian Bing continued playing dumb and asked what the senior meant, who he should not get close to, and what relationship Shiju was referring to. The latter's face darkened as he repeatedly asked whether Nian Bing was stupid. He was frustrated because he realized he would sound silly if he spoke more clearly. Ju could no longer restrain himself, and he blurted out that he was referring to Long Ling. They had grown up together, and he did not want other guys getting close to her. In response, Nian Bing smiled cheerfully and sarcastically remarked that only Ju was a good match for Miss Ling. He then congratulated his senior in advance. Ju was easily flattered and asked whether Nian Bing truly believed so. The latter had a slight grin and said that he believed so. Nian Bing dramatically explained that when he first met the duo, he felt they were a match made by the heavens and meant to be together. Nian Bing reassured him that with his social class, he would not have any ideas about Long Ling. Ju beamed excitedly and said they were now a family. He placed a hand on Nian Bing's shoulder and said he would handle the latter's difficulty because he had some pull within the guild. Nian Bing awkwardly thanked him in advance. Before Ju left, he reminded Nian Bing about the library and explained that the first 3 levels only had essential resources and information about magic. However, the 4th floor was the most important and was guarded by a powerful magic barrier that even sorcerers would find difficult to penetrate. When Nian Bing asked whether his senior had any ideas about how to get there, Ju looked back and said his position in the guild allowed entry along with Long Ling. The guildmaster was their teacher, therefore both shared the privilege. After the explanation, Ju asked Nian Bing to keep it a secret, and if there were a chance he would take the latter to the library's 4th floor. It was where he and Long Ling practiced and benefited from more significant improvement. Ju said they were now a family, and whatever he got, he would share with Nian Bing. As Ju left, Nian Bing felt his senior was trying to bribe him. Later that night, he snuck out of the Mage Guild and arrived at the Pure Wind House. As Nian Bing crept back into his quarters, a red palm suddenly rushed toward his face, and he instinctively dodged. The hand belonged to Shui Jing, who yelled at him, demanding to know where he had been all day. She was frustrated because she had spent so much time looking for Nian Bing. He denied it and said he was too poor to have fun. Shui Jing pinched his cheek and asked where her palm print was because she had used Dao Qi to slap him. Nian Bing realized why her slap hurt so much as he needed to use a healing spell. Shui Jing released him and regained her composure before asking for a favor. She needed his help. Nian Bing awkwardly scratched his head and said he was a mere wood chopper. Shui Jing took his answer as a yes and asked him to follow. Nian Bing was exasperated and wondered when on earth he had agreed. Shui Jing asked him not to worry because she needed to borrow something. Nian Bing was puzzled and asked what she was referring to. In response, the girl said she wanted his head. Her words turned Nian Bing's expression serious. However, Shui Jing quickly turned away and playfully said she had been joking. Nian Bing knew it was wrong, but he felt like beating her up. A moment later, the girl said it was awkward for her, but she needed to borrow his face. Nian Bing sheepishly said that his face was rigid. However, he only had 1 layer of it and no extras. Regardless, he knew a way she could toughen up her face if she were interested. Shui Jing asked him to shut up because she was not joking this time. She reminded him about the night they had spent talking on the rooftops. Nian Bing immediately understood she needed help with the guy she mentioned. Shui Jing coerced Nian Bing into helping her, but she dangled an incentive like a carrot to a bunny. She promised to ask Chef Ming to teach him a few cooking skills if their plan went well. Nian Bing frowned and asked her to let him in on the plan. Shui Jing faced him and said she wanted him to be her boyfriend. Nian Bing momentarily stood with the girl in the deserted courtyard and tried to escape the situation. He immediately argued that he was only a worker, and because of that, he could not do it. Shui Jing was flustered and yelled at him, asking if he thought she would let him be her boyfriend. At that point, she clarified that all she wanted to do was fake it, and her real intention was to see whether the guy in question liked her. She explained that there would be a banquet the following evening, and she wanted him to escort her. The guy she liked would be in attendance and would be salty if he liked her but saw her with Nian Bing. He understood that he was only bait. He said someone would discover he was a low-class commoner. Shui Jing assured him it would not be a problem because she would get him a mage's outfit. He would only need to act like a mage and listen to her instructions. As she left, she said that Nian Bing would not have to work the following day, and she would go to his quarters later to fetch him. Nian Bing remained in the courtyard and found it amusing that he had to pretend to be a mage. The thought reminded him of his appointment with the mysterious elder at the guild. He turned around and returned to the Mage Guild, wondering what the elder wanted from him. The boy soon arrived at the elder's door and knocked as he identified himself. The elder asked him to enter as the door swung open. When Nian Bing stepped through the doorway, he immediately reacted to his sensed change. The mysterious elder chuckled and praised Nian Bing for his quick reaction. He said it was not a mystery why Elder Lide had such high praises for the boy. Nian Bing had activated a level 2 ice wall spell the instant he sensed an unusual change in the ice element. The elder said Nian Bing's control and reaction speed were abnormal for his age. However, he needed more against a high-level warrior. As such, the low-level spells were useless. Nian Bing finally relaxed and saluted his senior, thanking him for the guidance. The elder asked him to sit because he wanted to discuss something. He retrieved a powerful gem and held it between his fingers. Nian Bing felt its powerful aura as the elder introduced himself. His name was Bin Jing. He explained that the Ice God's Pagoda was where all ice mages went to unlock the secrets of the ice element. Nian Bing nodded in agreement. In response, Elder Bin Jing asked what he was doing at the Mage Guild instead. Nian Bing paused briefly before explaining that he disliked the Ice God's Pagoda because there was no freedom. The boy could not tell why, but he simply disliked the place and wanted to learn in peace and not get involved in conflicts by becoming a chess piece for the Ice God's Pagoda. The elder's gaze darkened as he asked whether Nian Bing knew whom he was speaking to. The Ice God's Pagoda had eyes everywhere, and he was one of the frost priests from the Ice God's Pagoda. Nian Bing was momentarily startled when the elder continued speaking. He said the boy's assumption was ignorant about the Ice God's Pagoda because the stricter rules were, the better the conditions for mages to learn. Elder Bin Jing then gave the boy a choice, to leave the Mage Guild for the Ice God's Pagoda. The elder's letter would get Nian Bing a good position at the pagoda. After some silence, Nian Bing's gaze toughened, and he apologized to the elder before rejecting the offer. He had joined the Mage Guild. Therefore, he was already a part of it. The Ice God's Pagoda was good, but not where he wanted to be. As Nian Bing spoke, he stood up and bid the elder farewell. Elder Bin Jing remained silent as Nian Bing walked away. However, before the boy left, he asked whether Nian Bing had a death wish. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and comment for part 2, and follow Nian Bing's epic adventure.